Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane, and I do appreciate you for tuning on in today, doing a little bit of double dip duty because we've had some minor breaking news today. No, it's not related to the Seattle Seahawks, not as of yet, but maybe so. It's a move we had kind of talked about and turned over as a potential thing that could raise up. It's a little bit of one of those moments where you talk about it sort of in season and you go, hey, what do you guys think about this as a little thing that might come up? And it's not, no, they'd never do that. No, he's in Cleveland. But yes, we actually have today a letter released out by Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns saying he wants out. He wants a trade. Back when I was a young man growing up, there was a man who had played who was an absolute monster in the sport, played for some good teams, had himself a good career through 8 years, 115 sacks, monster against the run, just good all-around player. And then he became a free agent, went out on the open market at that time, and this was kind of the beginning stages of true free agency in the NFL. It was a little bit slow to come along on that part. And so he had his pick. And there was a young team out there in a very small market that had a young, good team, but they definitely had a need for this kind of player. And they had a vision for what this kind of player could accomplish if they brought him there and put him into that team and what that dynamic could create around what they had. And very much now we have this generation's Reggie White, albeit not a free agent, on the market. White, 8 years through his career, 115 sacks. Garrett right now through his career, 8 years, 105 sacks, but still very much the same kind of player in so many ways and what he could bring to this team. And this is not about pushing necessarily wholeheartedly to say, go make this deal. It's more about talking about all of what could encompass why you'd make this deal, why it would maybe be in consideration. We'll cover this end to end on whether even Cleveland be willing to do it all. We'll cover and talk about all that. But I do think it's an interesting discussion. You have taken a defensive-minded head coach to lead this thing through. You have one of the true difference makers for the position out there now on the market, albeit there will be a heavy cost to bringing him in. And it will get sticky, the parameters to make it happen. But what he could bring to play, and much of what Reggie White brought to play to the Green Bay Packers in that free agent signing they did, a team that did not find themselves active on the free agent market. Sound familiar? But a team that took that big swing, and it paid off in a major way, of course, because they went to back-to-back Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl. And by the way, that was with Reggie White at about 33 years old, as opposed to Myles Garrett, who's only 29 years old. So it's one where if you're looking at this from just a conceptually something that could go down and how you could see it go down, there's definitely a lot of ways we can walk through kind of the parameters of this deal of what it would cost and what it would take. But thinking and understanding from the Hawks perspective, what is it that everybody said about us all throughout this year? As far as pundits and national perspective goes, they say, where are the difference makers? I see some good players, but where are the difference makers? And maybe in Seahawks fandom, they would say, those young guys are developing, Brandon. They're coming along. It's only a matter of time. Look at Hall and the steps he took. Look at the steps forward Mafe took this year. But there's no more steps to take forward with a guy like Garrett. You will know what you're getting with him if he comes in here. He will be that guy, that centerpiece point of a defense, that sort of sun that everything else orbits then around. And then you can still run your scheme. You don't have to scheme it up to make it happen for him. Everything can be run still the same way. But you're adding a powerhouse at the position, the likes of which perhaps the Seahawks have never truly had coming off the edge in their history. You've had a Jacob Green, who was fantastic. Patrick Kearney for a year there. They gave you a Defensive Player of the Year-like season in that way, but it was a one-year-off kind of situation. And you've had Cliff Averill, Bennett. We had some good guys through here, but never quite the likes of the potential of adding this kind of guy. So let's look at first the letter that came out today that spoke to this a little bit. I won't read the whole thing, but to give you guys kind of the understanding of this, because there is something to take away, I think, from this letter itself. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. And that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of my life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, that lie there, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton, It has always been to compete and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Signed, Myles Garrett. So that letter is, to me, well composed, well thought out. That doesn't seem to me like a hastily written tweet in which he is wiping off of his social medias and it's simply just deployed to get a contract extension. Perhaps we do come to find that. I think that that's going to be a bit of a hard sell from the Cleveland Browns perspective on signing him to a new deal if the intention is truly to be a Super Bowl winner. This team is not in great cap space. Deshaun Watson just re-tore the same Achilles tendon that he had just tore this season. He's not to mention he looks horrible when he has played. They are not getting any better anytime soon by the looks of things. They may have a young roster. They have to turn over a lot of things. May have to pull out from a lot of bad money. Are they going to ask a 29-year-old Myles Garrett to go through that rebuild simply because they can put him on an extension, which is going to be hard to pull off anyway, even if they are going to? Tough sell. If his intention truly is, as he said, and it's the line that stands out as much as anything from this letter, the goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton, because this is what the Cleveland Browns would be telling him. Hey, you get the chance to be this Hall of Fame player staying in the same organization? You like that? Come on. Cleveland can. It's got a ring. I'm sure somebody's actually said that to him, and he goes, that's not what I'm here for. It's not what I'm about. So I think that the intention is pretty strong on his part to make this trade happen, whether it does go to Seattle or whether it does go to anybody else in the NFL. I think that this does tell you that. And I think it makes a lot of sense when we were just doing some of this math during the season and presenting in this channel that this was a real potentiality here for this offseason. And we've raised a couple of other possible potentialities, which people will snicker at this stuff, but it's like you can see some of this coming down the line. It's like dark clouds on the horizon in the Pacific Northwest, and you're feeling where the winds are blowing. It's like, well, that cloud's going to get over here. I know it is. It's out there up off the mountains, but that thing's rolling our way fast. And this is the way this one played out. So I think that there's going to be a strong intention. Are there going to be a lot of other teams out there pushing to try to make this happen ahead of maybe Seattle, willing to offer maybe more than Seattle? What would be the cost on this? Which is obviously the first thing that we want to almost be asking off the rip with this a little bit. And there's three major trades that have happened that have been similar to this. You have the Khalil Mack trade going to the Chicago Bears in 2018. Mack goes for 2 first-round picks, basically. They do throw back, it's a Mack along with a second-round pick and a conditional 5th. So they do the second-round pick back, but then they get back 2 firsts, and then they get a third back that same season, that same draft. So it's a little bit of tougher math to do. You can kind of go down the line on it and go, well, it's pretty much 2 first-round picks that the Raiders were getting back in return for Mack. So good assets there. In fact, this is the best of those trades. The assets have not gotten more so since then, because you then have Frank Clark, our trade to the Kansas City Chiefs in 2019. This is a year later, and this is where you get a first and a second round pick back for Frank Clark. So good assets there. That's a younger player than Khalil Mack was, albeit he didn't have the production of Khalil Mack. And getting that kind of swap like you did from Kansas City, those are later picks, late first, late second. So it wasn't prime territory as far as where you were in the draft department on those 2 picks. And then you see with Bradley Chubb, the most recent one here in 2022, the Broncos send him for a 2025 5th round pick, goes back to Dolphins and Chubb. So they get a 5th and Chubb in exchange for the Dolphins' 1st round pick in 2023 and a 2024 4th round pick. So, the price kind of went down there. Was Chubb as good as Clark was? Maybe not on where he was going to the Dolphins there from the Broncos trade at that time, but it certainly has not increased the price. And that is where I'd like to just touch on next with this before we get to a little bit of where the salary constraints might be as far as what is going to be the cost via trade. Can some team go to crazy town and throw one of those trades that everybody else in the room looks away and they just go, wouldn't want to be in his shoes in about a year from now? Yeah, there could be some team that's willing to do that. I think the Detroit Lions, for instance, could make, a super outside the box, trade where they're throwing the Browns all these picks because they need the help. Number one, Zadarius Smith, who they traded for, is not happy. He wants out. Is Aiden Hutchinson going to come back and be at 100% like he was before? Is it going to probably take him a year? And even after a year, could he still be less than what he was prior with that major leg injury? Maybe. So that's one where you're a little bit, from their standpoint, want some insurance, especially if you feel like you are a team that should be ready to compete again next year and push up there. So they're a type of team that could certainly come in. So, hey, Detroit, 3 first-round picks. Let's take the big swing. We got Goff. He's still our quarterback here. We're happy with him. We're good there. We don't have to make any other major swings anywhere else. Defense needs the help. Let's go. Seattle's not going to that price. But if we stay realistic to what it possibly could be, and understanding as well that Cleveland's looking to maybe now turn to more of a younger roster, and so that if you have not only draft capital, but some young parts in addition to this, where it's not all just about draft capital for them in the future, but also, hey, here's some young players you can have that can be potentially part of your core going in the future that maybe not necessarily as much a part of our core. Kenneth Walker, for instance, look at the running back situation right now in Cleveland. Jerome Ford's, he's fine, but Nick Chubb's probably like one of those leg injuries that you just seen with Aiden Hutchinson, not going to probably ever come back at the same kind of place. Could he be packaged in with a guy like Derek Hall, who Derek Hall becomes a little bit more redundant, doesn't he, if you get Myles Garrett? Not that you wouldn't potentially still maybe keep him, but maybe now there's also, hey, this is a bit of the package that we can use to sweeten this deal up a little bit, in addition to the first-round capital that we could throw into this. It's certainly costing you 1 first-round pick. It's certainly going to cost you a day 2 pick in addition to that. And then if you can put some more players in addition to that, that might be enough to get you a little bit past the finish line. It also is a potential where we've seen in John's past. He's made these trades before, and I know that he's not had success before in making them, but he has certainly been willing to dish out the prime draft capital for these kind of trades if he has the conviction of believing in that player. And I know that's where this gives some people a lot of reticence in this department to ever make these kind of moves once again, because you say, well, this is just, man, they've all not worked. They've all been bad. They've all been bad. But like all things, I think context matters, and the reasoning for why they went bad does kind of matter as well. The Percy Harvin one went bad as much as anything because of commitment, locker room problems, things that you could have backtracked to Minnesota and you were well aware of coming into the house here in Seattle. You just thought you could overcome them by the locker room that you had and the environment you created, culture, all that kind of stuff. And it didn't work. With Jimmy Graham, you took a guy that was a slot wide receiver, essentially. That's where he basically mainly lined up for the New Orleans Saints. And when he was in line, a lot of times he's running routes out of an inline set. Not asked to do a lot of blocking there. You turned him into an inline tight end. That's a mistake you could kind of see coming. Likewise with Jamal Adams. He was a guy that played around the line of scrimmage. He was a guy that you mainly wanted to use as a blitzer. By the time that you had him here in the final season, you were blitzing him under the rate that the Jets had him blitzed at in that scheme over there. I know initially they blitzed him heavy in that first season, but after that first season with Jamal, they started to try to turn him into a cover 2 shell safety and do a lot of back end stuff and coverage that just wasn't his game. You could see how that wasn't going to work. Myles Garrett, you're not going to figure out how to put him into the system. You're not going to have to worry about whether he's a locker room guy or not. You're not going to have to worry about his commitment or any of that. It's going to be real in that way. So I think that this is a little bit of a different tale on this one and making this kind of swing. I can understand that people will say, we're maybe not ready to do this. And then what are we doing on the other end of these moves? And how do we make all that other stuff happen? We'll get into the sheer numbers of this. But I think that there's certainly a creative package you could potentially put together that could be as competitive as anything else out there. I'm not saying it is likely to happen, but I just say that you could definitely come up with a very creative trade that doesn't necessarily take away from your foundation or have you lose so much out of house it's not worthwhile. But I think there's a method to do this with a little bit of that mix. And again, the draft capital wouldn't have to be, I think, huge. I know Cleveland's going to come out and say they're not willing to trade him. I know we've also got the quotes out here, like I'll show you right here, which people are going to reference to me. And this is, again, where you just got to understand we're in the dance here a little bit. We're all in the dance. Myles in the dance. Cleveland ownership is in the dance. What is that dance here? That dance is that we're not going to tell you we're trading him. Why would they tell you they're trading him? The first thing that then happens is you lose all of your trade value. It goes right down into the toilet at that point. You want everybody to think that, hey, we're holding on to him and he can kick and scream all he wants, but he ain't going nowhere. And so when you get a quote like this, where a reporter to Browns general manager Andrew Berry, and they ask him, hey, if someone says, we'll give you 2 ones for Myles, do you say, no, I'm not interested? And he says, correct. You can put that on the record. Well, that's exactly what you expect him to say. So we can't use their quotes or what they say in these moments as much as anything else. To this degree of things, Myles is going to be able to push this in the background. It's about how hard he wants to push. And, you know, how hard you want to push the organization back on the other side of it against a guy like Garrett, who's been a good soldier for you, while you've not throughout his career put a real high functioning team together to allow him to do the thing that he very much says in his letter. It's not like he's being unfair to the organization. This isn't a Tyreek Hill that's, I want the money, I want the money, I want the money, I want the money. Hey, now I want to win. Disingenuous. That's not what he's doing here. And they can certainly punish him and try to hold him over that barrel and say, no, the contract is what it is and you will stick this out. But that's kind of cold-blooded. Kind of cold-blooded when you've put yourself in this predicament from Cleveland's standpoint, and right now you're just starting to dig your way out of it. You're eyeballs deep, and you're like, all right, let's get to digging here. So we'll see what they do with it on that. I wouldn't take what he says at face value as far as saying, no, there's no way we're not going to do that. Just maybe. Keep an eye on this one, though, as far as that part goes. Keep an open mind to this as well on this one, that just because he says this doesn't mean that this doesn't come down the line. Some of what will, of course, affect this is the two different other ends of this, which always do factor into the trades. One is going to be the free agent market for edges. Not very good ones on the open market right now. It's a very lean crop. But the other factor into these trades sometimes on the value front is how does the edge group look? I'm having to trade for this edge guy because the edge group here doesn't look particularly good versus this draft right now, where you might look at some draft boards here, and I kid you not, through the first 2 rounds, you might see horizontal draft boards that got 14 players in the first 2 rounds. It's very possible. So then why do I go there when I can go for Shamar Turner or Nick Gordon or Walker, or Michael Williams? Why do I spend all this prime capital for a 29-year-old guy when I get this guy at this age? Again, well, you have that conviction and belief then that Myles Garrett is really that difference maker and worthwhile to go and make that swing at that point. You have to have that. But it is very possible here on this, I think, that they could roll this way. As far as dipping their hat into it, it's a little bit of an outside-the-box direction. Everyone is maybe thinking more, hey, how'd they go make a big swing for a quarterback? But there is a way you could lean into this, remembering, again, back to the model of what I've talked and called the 2012 blueprint. And the 2012 blueprint was not a blueprint led by the quarterback. I've tried to make this case so often, my fellow 12s, and so many sometimes will fight against me, and I become so unsure as to why, because I go, hey, why can't you utilize this blueprint you used 10 years ago that got you not only a Super Bowl win, but back-to-back Super Bowl appearances? Is it you zigging when everyone else in the league is zagging towards the quarterback superhero model? Yes, it is. Certainly. But it worked. And part of it worked, as people would like to say, because you built a legendary defense. No, wait, it was beast mode. You had Marshawn. Well, no, you had the most money you spent on the offensive line. It was also, if you think about it, a really underrated receiving core. And boy, Zach Miller, man, he certainly doesn't get talked a lot about, but one of the most underrated tight ends in Seahawks history, one of the greatest all-around tight ends in Seahawks history. And that was all of it. It was all of it. And partly you could do all of it because you weren't necessarily spending all that money on the quarterback. And maybe a way the direction the Hawks could go with this is certainly you could still stay with the Geno, but also back to that model of 2012 that found that success with the very same general manager who still resides in this front office. So is it so crazy to think you take down the same path you once took before 10 years ago? Is it so crazy to think that you go down that same path from 10 years ago with the same guy who took you down that path once before? I think not, myself. I'd love to hear what you guys think on this part of it. A little bit more I just wanted to go into that is certainly worth looking at. People are going to speak to a little bit of the contract structure of things. I completely get that. They have done it very tangy. It is very tangy in Cleveland right now with this contracts and all of this stuff. It is wild. It's all over the place. They've got a complete mess on their hands. There's no two ways about this. This is a Myles Garrett contract that was essentially signed back in 2020. It's back that long ago that this thing was signed and restructured and changed and re-put through the wash again and again and again as they're trying to clear cap space. As you can see, they lowered down his base hit from 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. If you look down the line on all of this, you'll notice with the base salary here, with this column right there, it's nothing but minimum base salaries down the board here all the way through 2026. And there's signing bonuses involved here. The signing bonuses would, of course, accelerate onto Cleveland's books. This is part of what would make this deal hard on them, is that the bonus money would hit. They'd have to clear cap space. That's more on them at that point to make that happen. The option bonuses, they would be freed from into the future on a new deal. The new team would be on the hook for those. What you're looking at as far as pretty much the price would go for this season in this first year of him, year one in 2025, if you don't do a contract extension that first season, which I don't think the team will do. I'm not sure Garrett will just get a new contract going into any new team, as that's not been a model that's worked out too well for teams recently. Maybe a ploy in this, maybe something that he's wanting to drive for on this. I don't know if he'll get it. I think he can have it kind of two ways here. You can either get the contract extension with Cleveland done and you can just remain in languish in hell for the rest of your career, or you can go play for a winner on the last year of this deal and then come back and sign the contract extension next year, after you've been there for a season and able to come back health-wise and all that, especially if he does have to get some surgery on his feet this offseason. But it would cost you $19 million in that first year. So from a cap hit standpoint, you'd be able to fit that in. That wouldn't be tremendously expensive. The void years are going to make this a little bit, as I said, tangy. It's going to get tangy because the other bonuses, the column I want you to take a look at, that's this one right here. These would be bonus money that he knows he's guaranteed to get, but bonus money that doesn't click in until those years. So 25, 26, 27, 28. They've got a couple void years in there, which is just dead money on the old book of Olnas. And that's a little bit of what also is going to make this interesting from a return standpoint to Cleveland. If they're trying to draw a hard line to get this max value out, it's like, okay, hold on here, Cleveland. I got the guy 29. I got him going in and doing the surgery this offseason. You have completely foobarred his contract up all over the place, not only from almost on your own books, but he's going to want a new deal with us. And to make that work with the void years that are now in the books for us on his new deal, it's going to maybe be hard for Cleveland to quite max him out that draft capital value. Like they may be talking big, what I'm saying right now. You know what I mean? They may be talking tough right now, like 3 first-round picks. Like, tap your brakes, Charlie. Tap your brakes. You got void year money dumped to 2025. You know what I'm saying? Or 2035. You know? Like, back up. Take a big breath. But Garrett's been tremendously productive, as I said, 102.5. I think I call it 104, but 102.5 sacks in his career. This is, of course, just the kind of the face surface stats you look at. Tends to be very good against the run as well. In addition to that, as you can see here this past year, still played in 17 games overall. He's been a guy that, even if he is beat up at times, always is out there playing every single game. He's been tremendously consistent. You look over here as far as the overall kind of PFF numbers. I can show you some of this a little bit. Let me show you down here. This kind of the career stuff for him in Cleveland. And again, this just kind of just quick snapshots, not to take wholly away from his game. I think anybody that's watched Myles Garrett can probably attest to the fact that these numbers fit to who he is. So he was the second highest rated edge by PFF last season. That was even, I think, working through those injuries as he was throughout the course of the year. 90 grade. You can see since 20, he's been at about a 90 grade overall as a player since then. 93, 94. I mean, that's as high as the grades go for any position. You don't see 97, 98 grades in the sport off PFF. This is as high as you get. So you indeed are getting a true difference maker. You're not just getting a good edge. You're not just getting, well, yeah, okay, he's a little better. He's like an all, he's like a Pro Bowl. Like, you're getting that kind of difference maker here off that side of it. Certainly, he is a little bit better as a pass rusher in that dominance, but he is still really good. His run defense is better than anything that we've got in-house right now off the edge, undoubtedly. But I do want to hear where you guys are coming out on this. We had a show earlier today. I want to thank all the folks that watched that. It was great to have Dan Viennes in the house here from Seahawks Forever. Hopefully you guys popped over there as well and gave him a sub on his side of it. I just wanted to cover this a little bit quickly today with you guys. We'll talk a little bit with you in the chat. I do want to hear from you guys a little bit on this one, but this will be a quick show. I know I do say that all the time, but we will be doing a bit of a quick show here today on this one because it is a bit of a double dip, and I've got actually a couple of shows this week planned for you guys that I want to get cooked up for you guys and get kind of worked on in the background as well in addition. But I think that this is one that is a very interesting discussion. It's not as much about pushing for any deals or this deal. We've got to do this. It's time. It's go time, man. Go. It's not that. It's as much saying, hey, you want to consider every move on the table. And that's what this organization does. John says he's in on every deal, and that's a smart approach. You want to consider them all. Maybe you come out in your process to saying it just doesn't make sense, but you want to think about it. You want to think about it. It's the creative approach to building a great team. It's hard to build a great team. If you start to close down this, you just can't do that kind of, those don't work out. Close that door. Only through this way. We can only go through this way to get to that place. So it gets harder. It's hard to build that great team. But if you consider all the possibilities and all the ways to get yourself there, more of a possibility to get in there. I appreciate you guys watching today. Please, if you could, hit that like button. It does help the channel out. Just a little thing, but it's a big thing. You know, it's kind of a nice thing. I do really appreciate it. And let's see where you guys are at on this. I'm sure this won't be a super popular one on this, but again, I am very, very interested in this one as far as just it's got me a little bit interested as far as a potentiality, because I don't think Derek Hall is that kind of difference maker. I don't think Derek Hall is 91% of Myles Garrett. I think he's more 81% of Myles Garrett. And so you can see a little bit of maybe why I look at a little bit of my view of it as I go, boy, it's hard to find these edges. As I talked about with you guys, I've been watching football now through 4 decades, and we have not had an edge this good potentially that we could go get if he becomes available ever before. So you can snicker as you may with it, but also consider that within that, if you will. But see where you guys are at. Appreciate everybody watching today. And as I said, please, if you can, hit that like button. Cameron Robinson says, I'd love to see that happen, but at what cost? I don't want to lose DK again to Garrett. I don't think that the cost would be DK to Garrett, Cameron. I think it's more of you're probably looking at the first round cost of this year, maybe a first round next year, kicking in a guy like a Derek Hall and Walker. This is more likely the kind of package that you would be pulling at that point. So then you would be making more of your moves as far as this would then be paired with, if you were doing this with probably DK and Geno coming back, because you're probably going for it at that point in your approach, number one. Number two, this would probably also mean that the Hawks would be spending a little bit more money in free agency on the offensive line versus seeking to address that in this upcoming draft. The Snail, how old is Myles Garrett now? He's 29. Are we talking about a second? If it's a hell no, it's a second round of this year. It's still probably a no for me. Definitely more than a second rounder. That's for sure. Daniel, how's it going, man? Adam Baum, what's up? What's up? Says, hey, my question from earlier in the live stream got examined. Yeah, I was planning on this one. When you wrote it, I was like, ooh, I got you later on this one, Adam, because when I did see the news of this today, this is something that I was turned on a little bit too, thinking on during the season. I was like, I bet this could go this way with Cleveland and Myles. I bet this twists this way. And he wasn't squawking or anything about that. There weren't rumors of this, but you can just see how these players can kind of start. It's like a boat, you know, where a boat takes forever to kind of turn the direction it's going to go, especially if it's not moving. And that's what I felt like here with Garrett on this situation. How can you blame him? Tommy, how you doing, man? Jail, let's go. Mythic, rest in peace, Reggie White. Rest in peace, Reggie White. Truly a unique talent in this sport and gone far too soon. You and Tyrell, good evening. What about the pick 18? A third and next year's second for Garrett. 18, a third and second. I think you're in the, Ewan, I think we're in the ballpark, my man. I think there's probably a kick of a pick. I mean, I think Hall is probably a part of the package. Hall or Mafe is probably a part of the package one way or the other on that. I don't think you're keeping them. There's maybe a way you can slip in Uchenna. Be like, how about Uchenna? Yeah, you want Hall? But hey, we got Uchenna. We'll eat the bonus. He's cheap. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be somewhere in there. It may drop to 2 firsts as an equivalent. You can chop that up, Ewan, off the 2 firsts off, making it, you know, a first, the future 2, this year 3, here's a player. There's ways of creatively getting there. And if the Hawks were to get this done, it would be by creatively getting it done, I think. It wouldn't be by just, hey, we're going to outswing somebody on draft capital. It'll be because we have some kind of part that we can throw into this that gets Cleveland going, yeah. Yeah, we kind of, sure. Jeb Worrells says, let's do it. Don't care about the money. Let's build a championship defense. I'm just saying, man, I'm with you, man. I'm like, hey, you're going to lean in a direction. You're going to say, hey, everybody in this league's going offense. We're going defense. Then I say, hey, it worked, as I say, 10 years ago. Why not again? Why not again? BB, man, Brandon, with 2 live streams, you're on a roll today. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I was feeling going, I want to hit this up with you guys again. I get excited about this kind of stuff. I love this sort of off-season discussion because I think it's so interesting about just in consideration of proper team building. And again, these Reggie White-like talents don't hit this kind of open market in this way very often. And 29 is not that old, again, considering Reggie was 32 when he went to the Green Bay Packers. This guy's not ancient. He's not over the hill. He's not ready to be done. He's kind of freak show, big edges, can play well into their mid-30s. White was an all-pro, I think, at like 38 years freaking old. I kid you not. He was definitely a unicorn, but Adam says if we got Myles Garrett, that'd be huge. It would be huge. It would be. You talk about injecting some life into the fan base. Yeah, Mythic. Reggie's one of the greatest edges to ever play. He's definitely got to be in that consideration. Fabrice says, I don't think he'll want to come to Seattle. May not. Definitely from the South and may want to remain down in the South, coming back, or East Coast. We can't afford the team we have now. We can't afford the team we have now. You could afford it, Herbicide. It's definitely going to restrict you in some of how you spend it. But again, that $19 million cap hit is not something that you can't overcome. If you bring him in here on the 19, I mean, you can probably still move some money around if you want to on that because you have so much space in 26, 27. The impediment on this is really the cost as far as how much it costs to bring him in here, not really the cost of what you have to make it do with your cap. You can make this work with your cap situation. You really can. You have flexibility this season, and then you have top 4 amount of cap space in 26, and you have top 2 amount of cap space in 27. And while I'm not an advocate for trying to necessarily rob from tomorrow for today, if the team is going for it today, if the team is trying to truly draw to be a contender today, then I will be an advocate for it. I'd say do it. Tiger says you guys aren't a Myles Garrett away, though. No, there'd be more work to be done, Tiger Town. But that's where, again, this move wouldn't be done in a vacuum space and time of just, Myles is it. We're finished. Here we go. It is done probably with a couple of other moves done as another 2, 3, 4 punch beyond that. Essentially, like I said, you're probably going to spend big more on the offensive line now in free agency versus the developmental approach, draft development approach that we've taken in recent years. You're going to probably drive a little bit more aggressively in this direction if you do this in some other ways to get those other things figured out. But if you had a difference-making edge in Garrett and you go get a nose tackle this offseason, there's not a lot there defensively, especially if there's a Jones re-signing at middle linebacker that needs to be done defensively, Tiger. Yeah, there's maybe a lot more offensively from a receiver to 3 interior offensive linemen to a move tight end that needs to be picked there, but especially if we dealt with that in free agency as far as the line goes, it's not an overcomable hump of things to take care of. Adam Bomb's with me on this. Love it. Tiger Town, I just realized this. Herbicides on it. You just want your Lions to get him. Tiger Town. You just don't want us circling around this guy, because I know you Lions fans are already like, I know y'all in a hurry. I got it. You're not sure about Aiden. I got, yeah. Good eyes, Herbicide. FNAF man says, sorry I joined late. What's a summary of why we need or can we afford him? I'd say why we need is that there is times that while it's nice to have in Mike McDonald's defense, his scheme and system, it's a great question actually, because we didn't touch on this a little bit more as I should have maybe at the top on this. Mike McDonald's system is not beholden to needing a pass rusher like Myles Garrett. It doesn't hurt. And as creative as Mike McDonald will get with the simulated fronts and the stack fronts, what I noticed this past year throughout the season is that he's not wild with it like Wink Martindale. He ain't wild with it like Buddy Ryan. He's a little more buttoned up. And what I mean by that is first down, second down, we're going to stay on our 4-man fronts. If he can get you into the position of precariousness, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, now you're going to get the stack boxes. Now you're going to get the creative fronts. But first down, second down, 3rd and 4, he's just going to kind of play it straight up. So there's going to be a way that a guy like Garrett can still go feast as ever before. because it's not as just crazy blitz heavy. It really isn't. It's really got a balance to the way that they roll it. Can we afford them? Yes. $19 million would be his cap hit next year. And you'd certainly be able to move some of that money around if you wanted to beyond that cap hit. So it doesn't have to even cost necessarily that much per se. Yes, you could definitely afford that. You're going to clear out a bunch of cap space with some guys you got to cut anyway, but you've got Lockett, Draymond Jones, Uchenna Nwosu, Roy Robertson, Harris, both of the two fans. You've got a restructure of DK Metcalf, who even if he signs a monster new deal, I understand it'll be a big contract. I understand it'll cost a certain amount as per year cost, but you're going to save about $5 million of DK's cap hit this year on a new deal. So there's $5 million more back into the kitty. So you can make this happen from a dollar standpoint. I understand people look at the salary cap right now and it connects in, and it should. Look, when you look at them over the cap and you look at the other teams this year and coming in this offseason, that can lead people away from things going like, oh my God, we can't do anything. I get the first look at that, but I've dived into these numbers. I've looked at it deep. Me and Brendan have done shows on this with the B&B show, really talking about the cap. There's 60, 65, 70, $80 million in levers that can be pulled from a cap standpoint to create space easily without you even having to do a bunch of acrobatics to make it happen. So you can absolutely afford to do it. It's really just the cost, what you got to take out as far as resources to go get them. Are you willing to pay that? Washi Visquez, thank you for the $2 donation. It says Garrett wants out, but we want in. To the Hawks Nest. To the Hawks Nest, I say. Let's go, Washington Visquez. Thank you for the $2 dono, man. It's good to see you in the house as well. We're all in here. We're tapping that sign in. You know that. Random McDaniel, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, I don't know why. Always thought Garrett would be a Hawk. It just feels like a right fit, doesn't it? It just feels right. I mean, you look at that thumbnail I've got there with him in the jersey, like it looks good. It looks real good. You know what I mean? And I think watching him play and seeing what he does to offensive lines, what he's done, and how hard he is to deal with, I think that'd be a hell of an addition to be able to provide to this defensive line. I know it would be hard as hell to pull it off. I do. We all remember, too, there was that moment a couple years ago. Back to yesteryear. Oh, the trolls of the internet. They're so funny, aren't they? Just so funny. Bitter Packer fan. Angry at us. At us for the Fail Mary. Like we get blamed for that? Like we're supposed to turn down the win? Gets on to Reddit. Had actually broken a legit story prior to that to give himself legitimacy. And then trolls Seahawks Nation saying Myles Garrett is in Seattle. NC Tac. He got us good there. But maybe he just all he was doing was psychically predicting there, Randall. Maybe he's going to come back and be like, see, I told you guys. I just didn't tell you what year. Brando McDaniel with a $2 donation says, compensation difference between Garrett and Parsons. Great question, Randall. Thank you again for the donation, but great question. The compensation for Parsons is going to be more, I think, overall. But I'm not sure. I would think it's going to be more part because of the youth thing. Garrett's got the two, reportedly he's going to need to have it's not going to be crazy surgery on his feet, but he does need to have some minor surgery on both of his feet. He is 29 years old. He's been in the league 8 years. Parsons got less tread taken off the tires there, and they are very similar players as far as ultimately the productivity they're bringing into the field. I do think Garrett's a better player overall, but Parsons is very close to him as a pass rusher. And so I think you're kind of in somewhat of the similar ballpark. I just think maybe there's a way the Cowboys team there could maybe get just a little bit of an extra kicker thrown in on top of that one. But I think it's generally the same area. The one thing with the Garrett is that too, the hard part about this, Randall, as I think about it and determining this is, can you get away with not having to sign Garrett immediately? You are going to have to immediately sign Micah Parsons. What does that then do to what the cost would be for Micah versus Myles? Like, I got a year off of having to pay Garrett up in the $30 million mark. I got to pay Micah $30 million a year immediately. Does that make it less? That's where we come down to. It's probably just much because there's different factors that kind of take both of their values and kind of do this with it a little bit. It probably all sort of settles out on the scales, Randall, being kind of close. Especially if you get with Garrett the year of play that you can have before you have to sign him to the extension. If you got to sign Garrett to an extension immediately, then Parsons costs. You're going to get more returns for Parsons. Browns get less for Garrett if that's a prerequisite, which I don't know how, especially if it's going to be hard for him to lead with like, no, it's about the Super Bowl. It's about the Super Bowl. So you guys are going to pay me? It's about the Super Bowl, man. Your letter, man. Yeah. You going to pay me? What about the letter? You said right there the letter. You're not Super Bowl right there. Bottom of the letter, right? But see your signature there? I see my signature. You paying me. Randall McDaniel, thank you for another $2 donation as well. Randall, he says, Garrett doesn't want to be defensive Joe Thomas. I was thinking a little bit about Joe today as well. Joe Thomas, the very fine left tackle, a great all-time left tackle in this sport that it's not going to get a lot of pub in that way going into history books because he did play in Cleveland on teams that were never good. And he was a good soldier and stayed in house and never forced his way out of town like he possibly could have. And he's had a great season. But again, are people going to talk about Joe Thomas with Walter Jones and Orlando Pace when it's all said and done? Some will. Football heads. But will a lot forget about him while not forgetting about some of those other guys? Yeah, those other guys played in Super Bowls. Joe couldn't even play on a winner. None of his fault. You can understand why Garrett's in the place he's at right now. This isn't a petulant child. This is a grown man watching his career winding down in the dredges of Cleveland. We would all do the same thing if we were in his position. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $2 donation. Kevin says, wouldn't we rather get Micah Parsons versus Garrett? Man, I'm not turning down either of them. So if John wants to make a swing for Micah because Micah's the younger guy, sweet. I'm okay with it. If he wants to take the swing for the guy that maybe he costs a little bit less, maybe I don't have to throw so much of our future to get this guy, I'm good with that too. So with Micah, the thing that I worry about with him and does show up with him, I mean, even on the cut up that I did, Kevin, of when we did the Kubiak tape, right? And I was showing some cut ups this past week of Clint Kubiak and some of the plays that he was rolling out. And I showed some of the Cowboys game where they hung like 40 on the Cowboys in that game. And it was a week 2 or something. And you saw in one of those plays where Parsons is the edge guy and they're running outside zone at Parsons' side. And Parsons has a tendency as an edge guy he's going to set the edge, but it's going to get really wide, that hole between where he sets the edge versus so basically instead of getting to the wide outside zone part of it for Kamara, he just cuts it to the inside shoulder of his left tackle and it's wide open there at that point. And Micah's technically done his job by setting the edge, but it's one of those crap edge jobs where you set the edge, but I can put a bust through the hole between the tackle to the guard because you're not pressing the edge down. You're not squishing that hole. Yeah, you want to keep your outside shoulder, but not at the cost of letting yourself get blown out of the lane. And so there is, I think, a bit of a difference between me when I think about it with Garrett and Parsons as far as how they defend the run. And there's a creativity you can use with Parsons and McDonald's defense that maybe even he's not able to be used in his stop in Dallas because he has, they've gone away from some of that inside linebacker stuff. And maybe that's some of where McDonald would just lick his chops at how he could utilize a guy like that in that way, from not just like, well, we'll just put him on the outside because he's really fast, but now we can kind of put him all over the place a little bit and just a little bit more weaponized. So there's some give and take here, Kevin, definitely between the two. But that's the one little worry I have with Parsons sometimes watching the tape with him is he is an inside linebacker converted to edge. There are some times out there where effort-wise on his tape, or like that play there I saw where Kamara's busting that touchdown, you go, yeah, it isn't clean, it isn't pure. Me, Thank you for the $50 donation. Me dropped a $100 donation on the channel earlier and another $50 here. I thank you. Pumpkin, thank me for me, could you? Thank you. Okay. Say thank you, me. She said me. Did you hear that? She said me. She said your name. She said that's how much she appreciates the $50 donation. He says, always appreciate the grind. 2 streams in a day. That's what's up. Go Hawks. Well, go Hawks, me. And I thank you, man, for all of your support and donations to the channel. Really cool of you two to give Dan the big $200 dono at the end of the stream today on the channel. As I know he's been just, busting his butt the past week out there in the Senior Bowl, doing everything he can kind of right and left. And, you could just tell by his notes and how exhaustive he was in his process and evaluation and what he was doing, looking at those guys, that he really did bust his butt. You can't fake it in this kind of stuff. And he was on it with his details with that. And so really cool of you, after I held him captive for 2.5 hours, to give him that love in that way. And I do appreciate it as well, my man. So thank you, man. Go Hawks. Go Hawks. And never grind when I get to hang out with you guys. Man, I love to get to do this, and especially with topics like this that I really enjoy turning these things over. I know some people like to just sort of poo-poo it and go, I was not going to have it. I really, as much as anything, enjoy it from a conceptual team building standpoint, and the give and take of it, the pluses, the minuses. I think it's a discussion that every NFL room is having right now. In 32, if not 32, at least a good 25 are going, okay, if this is on the table, does it make sense? I think you'd be pretty negligent if you didn't as a general manager. But thank you, me. I appreciate the kind words, and Pumpkin does as well. And thank you so much again for being so kind earlier too as well on that. I think it caught Dan off guard. I was like, Dan, you got a nice little dono there. It's your side. And he's kind of, huh? He's tired at the end, rubbing his eyes out. What? It was cool to see, though. That was awesome of you. So cool. God's Gang, thanks for the $2 donation. Says, could we trade DK for Garrett and some picks? No, you wouldn't be trading DK Metcalf to Cleveland unless DK tried to hit on John Schneider's wife. I don't think he would do DK ever that dirty. So no, I don't think that would be the case, God's Gang. What you would do is, if there was that intent to move DK, it doesn't necessarily have to be that there is an intent to move DK if you go get Garrett. That doesn't have to be like, that doesn't have to go together with the other one. You can still sign DK to an extension and pull Garrett in here. But if it was a necessity to get the draft capital per se, God's Gang, like, look, we want to get 2 first-round picks in this draft to give Cleveland because that would be then enough to overwhelm them from an offer standpoint versus the others out there and what they're willing to offer, then that could be a way that they could go about this too, on this to make that kind of equivalency happen. He's the only guy you're going to get a first-round pick back out there in a trade like that, of guys that you're willing to offer, of course. So, yeah, but that's the way it would happen. It wouldn't happen with Cleveland, God's Gang, because anybody trading for DK is going to have to sign him to a contract extension. And the Cleveland Browns right now, I mean, they really don't have the money to sign Garrett to an extension right now. Like, they don't have money to do much of anything. So they certainly are not going to come up with $30 million to be able to give to DK Metcalf. Not unless they're guaranteeing that money out to 2045. Paul Third, thanks for the $5 donation. Paul says, MG was already on a number of good defenses in Cleveland. Myles Garrett was already on a number of good defenses in Cleveland and just spent 10 years carrying their offense. If he needs to approve the trade, would only be to a top offensive team. I think that certainly the first part of everything I agree with there on what you said, as far as has been on some good defenses, and definitely that offense has sucked balls throughout his time period, and if they've been bad, it's like Andrew, it was like the Joe Thomas. You're not bad because of Joe Thomas. He's one of the guys that's actually pulling his oar. As far as he would want to approve of a top offensive team. He's not operating in this situation, Paul, as a free agent, first off. There is leverage from Myles Garrett's standpoint, but there is leverage to a degree. Can he say, I'm not going to go to, I don't want to go to Seattle. I poo-poo this trade. Yeah, he can do that. But again, it's a very fine line on how you can walk on that when you're in a situation where a team can just hold you from a leverage standpoint and be like, look, don't play. We'll save the money. I mean, look at a Cleveland standpoint, Paul. Like, let's walk this through. We're going to hardline you. Sit. You signed the contract. Deal with it. All right, I'm going to sit. Go ahead. I'm doing it. I am not playing games. I'm going to sit out. Do it. We'll find your ass every day. And we get into season games, and you know what we need right now, Myles? We need cap. So if you want to sit the first 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season on that note, cool. We get 7 weeks of your salary back, and we'll just put that back on the books. So, like, he doesn't have ultimately control. He's got some leverage in that nobody in this situation wants to deal with a player that's your star player that's been a good soldier that you're going to hardline. But if that guy starts hardlining you, it starts getting a whole lot easier hardlining him. No, I want to go to Los Angeles. Okay. All right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I want to go to LA. I'll go to LA, or let's see, I'll go to Baltimore. Yeah, no. So you can push us into the point of saying, I want the trade. We're not going to go let you go pick a pony. We need to get our returns back for this on that side of it. We're in kind of a predicament here now where we have to eat this dead money from hell. And there's not going to be a cavalcade of teams aligned that this is going to work for us on to get that value back to make this deal work, so that we're just not being kicked in the shorts here for the next 2-3 years. So you want to get out of town because you don't want to just go Canton. So I think that it's good in theory to a degree. I just don't think he's going to have that quite a power on it, Paul. I think he does have some leverage, but I doesn't think he has the power, because ultimately Cleveland still does control his rights, and ultimately it's very hard to hold out in the NFL and to try to play that strategic position and forcing a team's hand in that kind of way. Kevin Mullen, thanks for the $2 donation. Says Micah Parsons and McDonald equals Belichick and Lawrence. I could see how he could have an affinity for Micah Parsons as well. I certainly could. There's no doubt about that. I think that the Cowboys are a team that's a little bit more into that, potentially could be cold-blooded in their role. They've done this with players in the past, where a guy like Micah Parsons could come right out his own letter and be like, due to the fact that Jerry Jones is a dipshit, I don't want to be here anymore. And they'd be like, yeah, that's good. You're going to be here for life. I ain't ever letting you out of Texas. You're lucky I let you out of Dallas. Stay in there. So I don't think that when it comes to this one, I'm not so sure that Dallas would be as willing. They're not in as bad a situation. Jerry's still thinking that this team is still just potentially ready to go. If things can just, if Dak just would have stayed healthy last year, all right? If that hammy was just a little bit tighter, we're in the Super Bowl. We're taking down Jaden Daniels. We're busting Jaden Daniels' ass, all right? That's happening. But who can tell the injury at quarterback? It's going to happen. Just got to roll them punches, go next year. Run it up again. Reload it again. We don't rebuild in Texas. Reload. But Parsons, yeah, Belichick kind of weapon in that way and use him all over the place. I could completely see it. You're certainly not just rolling him off the edge, Kevin. If you bring in Parsons, you're going to see him utilized to the utmost all over the place. Mike, it'd be too much fun for McDonald not to. Like, he would have so much fun with it. This is the guy that was rocking Leonard Williams as a wide 9 edge last year, and it was working. So you better believe he's going to unfurl all the rest along with it. BP, thank you for the $5 donation. I don't want Micah Parsons because his podcast will be a distraction during the season. He's more worried about his shows. Well, I can tell you this, BP, as a guy that once we get into season, it's just the days all run together and all I have to do is podcast. Like, that's my only thing I got to do. And it's like, just, you can't believe how much time it ends up taking to do it. And I'm sure he's got assistants and he pays for a lot of that stuff, but it is hard to have your attention in multiple different areas. And it's hard enough to be a great football player just by making that your sole concentration. So, good point. Good point on that. Certainly something that I'm not sure is helpful to players to be doing podcasts during their career. I think there's just plenty of time to do that once the career's wrapped up, and then you can just solely focus on it. And then both of the things are probably better for it, right? The playing career is better for it, and then the podcasting is better for it because you can make it that sole focus. Thanks for the $5, though. Appreciate you, BP. Washington Fist Quest. Me has brought honor to us all. Me has brought honor to us all for sure. I'm very kind. He dropped a couple $100 over my channel last week too as well. And just amazing support here of the channel from you guys. I always say it, but it's just always the truth because you guys see it every show we go live is that the love's always there here on the show as far as that goes. And like I said, it was just so cool today as much as anything. It was great. You dropped the 100 on me too, but just being able to gift that, have that popped over to Dan there at the end and him get to see that after I know what's been such a long week for him. He's got, I think, like 3 shows he's doing today. So just very cool. Very, very, very cool. He's just breaking through right now as Dan in that way and being able to get this going full time, and he's about to jump in. So folks, do please get him that sub over there too. Tyler Morano says Cooper Kupp is leaving as well. Very good point. Buried a little bit of that as well on this, Tyler, is that Cooper Kupp, it's being announced right now that the Rams are going to try to move him in a trade, or he's been told he's going to be moved in a trade. So a guy that looks like he is going to be available on the market as well. Don't know where the health is at as far as he goes, but Rams are kind of doing some silent, quiet pivoting in the background of things. You're already letting Kupp know. You're not even opening the door to renegotiation there. You're just saying, okay, we're just trading you. And then there's some Stafford rumors out there of Stafford being a dingling and dangled out there. He's being dingled and dangled. You don't want to be dingled and dangled. Adam Baum, didn't the Lions sign Zadarius Smith? What a waste of money. He was their big trade deadline deal move last year, Adam. I really thought that they should have just made a real hard play for Max Crosby at the trade deadline last season. I thought they should have gone all in. You don't know where the health is out of Aiden into the future. Instead, they just tried to go for some kind of like B- move in Zadarius Smith, and it wasn't enough, especially for a defense that didn't have any other real health across the board to make that happen. Really felt like the Lions dropped an opportunity there. We say you got to be very well aware of where you're at as far as my 4 different states of an NFL football franchise. Rebuilding, ascending, and I often reference in between, of course, purgatory, and elite. And I often reference you got to be aware of it because you don't want to be in purgatory, right? Or if you're in rebuild, you don't want to act like you're ascending. And if you're ascending, you don't want to act like you're rebuilding. But there's another part of this too. If you're a Lions team and you're elite, don't act like you're ascending. And a Zadarius Smith-like move in that moment, given the time and space, that's a move that like an ascending team would be making. We'll kind of be in this year. We'll throw a little bit on the table. I'll up the ante a little bit. Go in. And even after that year with a guy like Max, you give up the max capital. You get him back over. You still have him there into the future. Instead of pivoting into this offseason now where Zadarius is trying to punch his way out of town, so that's just a blown pick that you gave up for him, albeit it wasn't a big one. And then now you're right back in the same predicament. Jeremiah Johnson says, oh my God, say it ain't so. Oh, yes. Jeremiah says he wants to be a Seahawk. He told me. I hope you're right, Jeremiah. I hope you're right. Yeah, Duran, Rams plan to trade Kupp. Very interesting. I mean, there could be just that they're looking to make, a swing for a guy like, Wilson out there at with the Jets, the Jets wide receiver. I might be forgetting his last name, but maybe they're just looking to make the swing for the Jets guy on this. That's a possibility. But boy, just to not even want to renegotiate with him, bring him back in on a low-end deal and then go make that big move on top of it. That would have been the old Rams way with it. I don't know what the Rams are doing. They're showing some signs here of maybe just, kind of inching their way back a little bit on this. Thrill House, I can see the Niners going hard after Jihad Campbell in the draft. They love their linebackers. It's a possibility there, Thrill House. I mean, they're looking at maybe losing Dre Greenlaw this offseason. And even if Greenlaw comes back, he still wasn't at 100% coming off that Achilles last year. Fred Warner was playing with an injury throughout the whole season. You only have D winners there behind those guys. And so there's much more need there to not only find the future, but to find some depth and immediacy. You can play both Will and Mike. It was a little high to be taken at 12, I think, where the Niners are selecting in the upcoming draft. But I like Campbell. I do like Campbell. Tell you what, Jack Campbell wasn't taken too far away. Looking at another Campbell 2 drafts ago. And I'll tell you this, I like Jihad Campbell a lot more than I like Jack Campbell. 76, as much as I like Myles Garrett, I'd rather try and get Joe Burrow. Well, I think certainly before you make this kind of move, 76 Kingdom, you would want to make sure that you are certain that the guy like Burrow would not be made available. But I would agree with you. If there came down to that, you know Burrow is going to be available, I wouldn't even sniff MG at that point. I would be putting I put an asset package together to blow the Bengals' socks off, and I would go hard at Burrow. Brian says even discussing Garrett when we're $25 million in the cap hole is hilarious. Yeah. Again, I know that there's a lot of reservations on this, Brian. I really do. I will show this again. I've often showed this, but I think that looking at the cap situation is kind of the wrong way of doing this a little bit right now. When you just look at the cap in 2025 and you go, oh, there's where the cap is. And I understand why there's a draw to do it that way. But at the same point in time, it's not really accurate by the order, Brian, of the way that they run their business, how NFL teams run their business. They don't run it by like, well, we're this over the cap, so we're toast. We can't make any of these other moves. We're just going to have to soft sell our way through this off season. So these are just the moves off the rip. These are the moves off the rip. Let me add it up as I'm running along. We've got Rayshon Jenkins, $5.4 million saved. Noah Fant, $9 million saved. Draymond Jones, $12 million. Tyler Lockett, $17 million. Uchenna Nwosu, $8.4 million. George Fant, $3.8 million. And Roy Robertson Harris, $6.6 million. So, just the initial house cleaning alone, we've got $62 million in cap space, Brian. And so when you go, well, why we're 25 in the hole? Okay, we're 20 in the hole in feasible cap space. That has a lot to do with some extra stuff on the roster, by the way, with the over the cap and the way they show the numbers and the top 53 on the cap and how there's some extra stuff in play on this a little bit with this. But even still, there's $62 million there that get freed up. You sign DK to a new deal. You're saving about $5 million on the year of 2025. So you could throw another $5 million on top of that. You're up to 67. You sign Geno to a new deal. There's probably another $5 million saved on the first year of Geno's deal. His cap cost this year, what it's due to cost right now versus what it would actually cost for 2025 would save you minimum 5, if not more than that. So now you're up over $70 million, Brian. You still think you can't get it done then? Still think it's like impossible at that point? Especially understanding when we take a look at over the cap and when we look at how you can move into the future. And what do we see? So what Brian's referencing is this right here, which looks real precarious to everybody involved. Again, it's not top 53 salaries and how Overcap runs this. The books are a little bit overinflated in how they show the negative money on this. I understand why it gets everybody worried, but this is why you got to consider those levers that can be pulled by the cap to not just get caught up in just sort of simplifying it down to, well, we're negative 20, so we're screwed. Then the other part of this, as I've spoken about, is this. 2026 is now what you're looking at. So 2026 on the tab, you can see there, the Seattle Seahawks are top 4 with $169.675 million in 2026 of cap space to spend. Next year, you have $170 million of cap space, and only 3 other teams have more cap space than you. You have 0 dead money in 2026 on your books. The Niners, for instance, already got $4 million on that. 2027, your Seattle Seahawks have the second most amount of cap space available in the NFL on what is due to be potentially a $314 million cap. They have $285 million in cap space. Why am I showing 26 and 27? Because any new deal you make, you can bury money into these 2 years without much problem because there's so much damn space. It's got to go somewhere. So we got the money. This is definitely, you can sell me on like, it's too much to give up. And we don't want to give up that draft capital. He's too old of a player. There's too many other things to be done. There's much more work. Like, that's to me a sell, Brian, for sure. But I don't understand the money thing where you can make money work however you want to make it work in the NFL. I mean, especially with the flexibility the Seahawks have of their cap situation, not just this year, but into the next 2 years. I can understand completely looking at the initial point of it and going, well, look at that right there. I mean, that just tells you right there it's a no. It's like, yeah, but it's why you got to kind of dive a little bit deeper on this stuff, because there's more of a deeper story to be told, which is that you have the flexibility to do it. And just a reminder too, if you are referencing to the Hawks Nest, if you can, just be Brando Hawks Nest. Jeb Worrell says, league better pray Mike don't get his hands on Myles. They better. He's going to unleash the beast. Tyler says, what about give them Lockett and one edge? Would be that enough? No. They're going to want some draft capital back on this. And they're going to want a minimum of 1 first round plus players. But I would imagine that there's going to be competition for Garrett's services. So you're not getting him in at a discount or something lower. You're going to have to outpace other teams to pull him in. Maze, what are your thoughts about Ernest Jones possibly not re-signing? There's some good linebackers in this draft. Indeed, there are some really good inside linebackers in this draft, Maze. We were just talking about Jihad Campbell, who I mocked in my first official mock 1.0 to the Hawks at 25 after trading back. And I like the kid Knight. South Carolina kid's good. Schweisinger out of UCLA is nice. Jay Higgins out of Iowa, he can play. I mean, these guys are all going to be starting inside linebackers in this league, I think. How good they'll be and where that's at, there's some difference there. But, I think John's got a price he's willing to pay for Ernest Jones. And if Ernest Jones is going to determine he wants to be paid 3, 4, 5 million over that, I think that's enough to where John's going to walk. I think that's not enough of a difference there where John's like, we'll find common ground there. I think he wants to be at 10. If I had to guess on John, he wants to be at 10. He's maybe willing to go to 11. And Jones right now is probably pushing more for 14. And Jones's people are probably hoping they can land more 12.5, 13. And we'll see who ends up winning out on this one. But I do think John's got a bit of a line on this one of where he'll go. Partly informed in Mays by that there are linebackers you can just draft in this draft, and that it is a position that has been devalued. It's hard for these guys to typically get their money. There's been some exceptions to that rules in recent years, but it remains true by and large. Billy says, the more I would think about it, the more I like the idea of trading Geno, going heavy on interior offensive line and free agency in early rounds of the draft, and drafting someone like Dart or Howard in the 3rd round. 2012 all over again. I've called it the blueprint, and I don't get a lot of, I got to be honest with you, Mick, I probably don't sway a lot of people back to it, where I think just the general consensus I kind of get sometimes is that was a different time and place on this. But I think that you created in a way this way, and you were definitely going a different direction of the rest of the league at that time. And you could very much say the same thing about doing that same direction now in that same way. And it's a pathway that I think can find success. I think that it's still, you can still ultimately get there. I understand it's a creative way, and I understand it's very different how everyone else is doing it. But we just did it 10 years ago. I mean, even 10 years before that, Matt Hasselbeck was a very good quarterback in this league, but he was really, at the end of the day, really a top 10 quarterback more than a top 5 quarterback when he was at his best, when he was in 05. And again, a little bit less driven by another team that got to the Super Bowl, not necessarily needing to be driven by the quarterback position per se. Nervosos, I don't want to see any sort of massive trades like that until we have our quarterback of the future situation sorted out, especially for a 29-year-old defensive end. It's very fair. Very fair. Large in season 08 says, do you think Jackson Dart would be a good fit for the Seahawks at quarterback? I do. I do think that, as mentioned above, that you're going to need to give him time to develop. Most likely, he's not taking really anything under center at all. All those guys at the Senior Bowl are going to have to learn that kind of footwork, and you've got an offense that's predicated on under center stuff. So there's a long way to go for any of those guys. I like Dart a lot. The problem on this Largent is that he's firing up the boards in the way that sometimes can happen with these quarterbacks through the pre-draft evaluation process, where that the further the teams get away from the film and what should actually really be guiding them, and the more that they get into Senior Bowls and combines and pro days and throwing against air, the more that they start to get consumed by the spirit of wanting a quarterback more than where the quarterback really rightfully should go. I like Dart, I like Campbell, but I like these guys in the third round, and I'm pretty hard-lined on that. I wouldn't want to reach for any of them in the first or the second, and I think that on both of those accounts, probably somebody's going to reach for both of those two guys in either the first or the second, and that's I don't want to go reaching like that. Draft to the appropriate spot of value on that, because you reach for a quarterback, and that bites you in the butt, Largent, as much as anything. Is a lot of these teams that we see, I think, fail at the quarterback position high in the draft, just take those guys rather than it being about the conviction they have in the guys, like Chicago just sort of seeing Justin Fields fall in their lap, or the Steelers just sort of taking Pickett, because some of it's also a little bit of the fear from losing out on Marino at Pitt and Pickett at Pitt, and fans going, you better not ever do that again, and they need a quarterback, and so you got to be careful going that direction with it too. But Jackson's really good talent and elevated his stock like no other quarterback at the Senior Bowl. Might be in the first round mode at this point. Duran says the problem with Woolen seems to be football, X's and O's issues. Metcalf just needs more consistent. I'm sorry, you guys are having a discussion on Metcalf and Woolen. Emily's is off topic, but I think Seattle should draft Drew Aller next year. I think he's in play next year, Emily. They haven't, especially if they haven't addressed the quarterback position in the future at that point. By this time next year, he's absolutely in play. Metal Dragon says, unless we can get to the Super Bowl in the next 2 years, trading for Garrett makes no sense to me. I don't think we have the offense to make that happen. It's a fair point. Definitely a move that you make for the here and now, Metal Dragon, that's for sure. Adam Pumpkin wants Garrett. She does want Garrett. That's right. Alan says Cleveland probably doesn't want to trade him in their division either, right? You don't typically see those trades go down in the division, Alan. No. Because it's kind of a hard line things teams just don't do. Like, it's the very same reason, Alan, like we have a need for a receiver. Cooper Kupp's from the Pacific Northwest region. He played his college football out there at EW on the east side. But I don't think that there's any way that the Rams send Kupp to Seattle in a trade. You just don't want to be that team that trades him in division and then gets hammered by that guy in the future, and then the fans hammer you. And it's kind of one of those pathways to losing your job off kind of those sort of moves, going in that direction if you're on the wrong side of it, versus if he goes out there and balls out in Buffalo. It's like, well, it was because it was Buffalo. Kid from the Hood. Hey, Brandon. Hope you're good. I'm doing good, man. Hope you are as well. Says, do you think we have an advantage to get elite defensive players because of Mike Mack? I don't think it can hurt, Kid from. Yeah, I think it certainly helps. I think as a defensive player, if I'm looking at this, it's a little bit like Leonard Williams in the situation he got to benefit from this year at times, in that what you bring to the 3rd and 7, let's take a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. And what you need offensively in those moments, kid, from is I need to hit this 5 to 7 step drop, and I'm going to need a little bit of time for those routes to develop to get up there, to get up to 9, 10, 11 yards, to get to the first down markers. And that's going to require pass protection to have to hold up. And if I would do like sometimes we would do in 2019 or 2021, where we're going to run a 4-man front and we're going to try to drop everybody else back into coverage and then squish down the passing lanes and the windows as far as we can. Just give them as little space to throw into as possible. Now what happens when you have a Myles Garrett on that type of defensive line is that you still then end up with a bare minimum of 5 offensive linemen for 4 defensive linemen. So the offensive line at any one given time can double that defender up and then shift the rest of their blocking to one-on-one across the board, especially if you don't have any other dogs like that big dog that you're trying to isolate. Now, if they have a running back there chipping and helping out in pass pro, and you're not bringing a blitz and you got the 4-man front, now you have a running back that can also help out on a second defender if those other 3 guys aren't able to single up what they've got going on. So when you get a guy like McDonald, what he does is he brings those stacked fronts up on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, and then that forces the offensive line to change their protections away from the double teams. It gets you one-on-ones across the board, and my cat's freaking out, so guys, just deal with her. She's kind of losing her mind here with it. And then you can be able to just go and get home at that point. So, it gives you a better chance as a defender to know, I'm going to get a one-on-one. I'm going to get a chance to just all I got to do is beat this guy in front of me. And if I do that, it's a good chance I can go get myself a sack. I'm not going to get the running back coming up and chipping me. I'm not going to get the secondary blocker coming in. I got this wide range of space I can kind of pass rush within a little bit. I think Leonard Williams was freed up in a major way to get this happening this year. And I think same thing could be said about any edge that you would want to bring in here too. Duran, do we have a 2nd round pick this year? We do, Duran. We've got all of our picks this year, absent, of course, the 4th rounder basically that we gave. We got a couple of extra picks. We'll probably end up with about 9 picks in total when it's all said and done, with the compensatory action coming back the other way. And like I said on this, we've got a lot of inner chat as ever in the chat on it. So I know some people are kind of new on this. Just remember with it, I try to as much now as ever just respond more to Brando, HNB, because there is so much discussion that'll sometimes go between the chat. And I want to let you guys have your kind of talk on that, not necessarily butt my way into it. So if it is just a reference to me, just make sure, please, you can just be whatever you want on that. I'll definitely be on the look on that side of it. To run. Boom, boom, boom. Says, did I see the Cards going for Garrett, if anybody? I could see it. They're definitely a team that's going to need to be aggressive for an edge this offseason, and that would be a team that would have some good draft compensation to offer, especially if they throw their 1st round pick into it. Thrill House, Hawks Nest, do we really think John Schneider wants to trade all his capital away to potentially tail end of his career for anyone? I think he doesn't want to repeat Jamal ever again, and he loves drafting guys. I think that there are, when it comes to would he potentially be willing to trade draft capital away? I don't think Jimmy Graham was, when he traded a 1st round pick for Jimmy Graham plus Max Unger, I don't think that Jimmy Graham was tremendously younger than what Myles Garrett is right now. So he's shown a willingness in the past to make that move. Has he learned his lesson off the back of Jimmy Graham to never take that road again? Maybe not. But he has been willing to do it. That would be the point I would say to that on that side of it. I referenced earlier, Thrill House, in the stream, a couple of these trades that occurred before, and the 3 trades people will mention. And something I've been my new thing, I always like to harp on stuff, but my new harping thing for me right now, the real big drive inside and looking at football really currently has been the not to ever try to simplify stuff too much. What is it? Causation doesn't make chorality. Chorality doesn't make causation. However they say that, Thrill House. So what I mean by that is that you could sort of simply take Percy Harvin, Jimmy Graham, and Jamal Adams, 3 first-round trades made over a 10-year period, and say, see, that's nothing but a model of failure and why you don't do it. But I think all three of those things individually failed for kind of their own reasons. And a lot of those reasons were known about Thrill House prior to you making those moves for those players, meaning that you stepped into the mud that you knew was sitting in front of you. Versus there's not as much of a mud patch sitting in front of you here necessarily. I also don't know about the end of the career thing. He's played 8 years. So is he very far into the depths of his career? Yes. But we come back to, would John Schneider be willing to do this? John Schneider was a young pup within the Green Bay Packer organization. He was cutting his teeth in Green Bay when they made this signing for Reggie White. When they made Reggie White the highest paid, think about this, they made Reggie White the highest paid defender in the NFL at 32 years of age, 3 years older than Myles Garrett. Now, Thrill House, does John look at that situation and say, oh, what a failure the Reggie White move was for us? Man, that's where the Packers went wrong. Or does he look at that and go, if I've got an opportunity to do what we did with Green Bay back 30 years ago, 20, whatever it is, when is it, 30? God, I'm getting old. 20 years ago. I think he takes it that way. I'm doing some math here, Thrill House. For sure, I'm doing some math. But I look at those three moves with Percy and Jamal and Jimmy as it's very easy to deconstruct those. Percy was a locker room problem with the Vikings. He was a headache with the Vikings. He had problems staying out on the football field with the Vikings, with reported headache problems. And those things then showed up again when you played him here. He had the injuries. He was a locker room problem. Wasn't a shocker you ran into it. With Jimmy Graham, he was a slot receiver. You turned into an inline tight end. Very simple to deconstruct that. You brought him in to be a pass catcher extraordinaire, and you decided to make him a run blocker. Congratulations. Like, that's not hard. That's not a failure because, like, you shouldn't have just given up that draft capital for that guy. That's because you misused this guy. He had a major injury in addition to that, which definitely curtailed some things too in addition to this. But that's an explanation, and it wasn't a complete failure. It's just that you didn't get out the utmost of what you wanted to do in that deal. And then Jamal, you misaligned him into a different role than the one that made him successful with the New York Jets, the very reason that you traded for him. The very first season, you blitzed him at well over a 10% rate, and then moving on beyond that in his career, you were below 5% or something. And he was blitzed to like 6.5%, 7% with the Jets. You didn't use him around the line of scrimmage. You used him to turn him a cover 2 shell safety. It's like, well, that's easy to deconstruct to understand why that thing failed. On top of the fact that his health just completely went the toilet. And the health part is realistically one to bring up. That's one that's probably a fair one, Thrill House, to say, well, look, there is the health, there is how much he's played, how much gas is in the tank. But I don't know if 29 is necessarily one that would preclude you from thinking that there's at least 3 more good years of high-level play there in this guy, especially for being that freak show type of guy. And those tend to be the ones that play late into their career. Edge or defensive tackle-wise. You know, Calais Campbell kind of freak show, still playing at 38. Reggie White, who I mentioned is kind of my comparison to this guy, Thrill House. He was an all-pro, I think, at 37, 38 years old. Remember we got the Julius Peppers guy. Remember how long he played till like 37, 38 years old. Reggie White, 38, 30. These guys tend to play pretty late when they're this freak show. They're big and they can move that well as a young player, where even if they lose a step, they've got the refinement at that point and the knowledge. DeMarcus Ware, another guy like this who played really deep into his career, into his 30s. So I don't think he's super old in that way. Definitely getting a little bit up there, but it ain't crazy. Random McDaniel, thank you for the $5 donation. Do you know if he has a no trade clause? I say he's the best defensive player in the NFL. Best defensive end since Bruce Smith. Free-spirited dude. He's a fit for Seattle. Yeah, I think, Bruce Smith kind of right in that same era of Reggie on that Randall. And I do think Reggie, I know Bruce got more sacks, kind of more longevity than Reggie. I still would have probably taken Reggie overall, but yeah, he's in that same area player. I would say Randall, it's in the same stratosphere of player. This isn't just merely a really good edge. This is one of the best edges in the game, and will still be so. There's no reason to not think that he won't be so for the next couple of years. He doesn't miss football games. He's out there every single week. He's tough as hell. He's been a good soldier on some bad teams. Another one of those guys that you wonder, like, look at how well he's played on a loser. Look at how good a job he does getting his engine turned up on a bad team. What happens when you get that guy actually playing for something? gotten to get to see a little bit of this Leonard Williams last year. A guy's been on a lot of losers, a lot of teams that are not even pushing up to 10 wins this season. You saw a guy give you a defensive player of the year like effort of play and production from him, being able to actually have something you're going for. Imagine how it just kind of dulls the spirit a little bit year after year, playing within that depressing environment, and what that can do to you. And that even if you're the strongest of minded willed people, that it takes a little bit of a hitch out of your giddy up. Puts a hitch in your giddy up. See, let me say it right. So just another reason where I think you're going to get the best version of Myles Garrett on top of this with him coming on in. But yeah, I think we're talking the same thing, Randall, as far as that kind of player. And no, I do not believe that he has a no trade clause in his contract. No. I think that there's a part where you can't hardline this and just throw him anywhere you want to throw him, because you can always come back to the team and be like, I'll make life hard on you now. But yeah, as well, I don't think he gets that full power to dictate where he wants to go and say, like, I'm here. Like, no, you can get some say, we'll give you a list of 4 teams. How about that, Myles? Here's 4 teams, or 3 teams or whatever, we like the compensation from all these guys. Brian Myers, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, Brandon, Nick Gordon or Shamar Stewart? Love the convo with Dan today. Hope you can get to Mobile next year. Well, I'm going to definitely get to Mobile next year. I just kind of missed my chance this year. I think it's going to seem way with a little bit with the combine. I'd like to get to both of those, and I've got media credentials, so I can actually pull it off now. But I just need to get everything finance-wise and all that stuff in line to get it to bow and then plan it right. Boy, you ask a good question, man. You going to throw me some Sophie's Choice early on here, Brian? Is that what it is? I got to pick between the boy or the girl. Is that what we're doing here now? Is that what we're doing here? I don't know if I like that. I like them both, man. I really do like them both. Texas A&M, they love their big edges there. They do. And Shamar is a big one as well, right? There you got 280 or 290. So I'm just checking my notes on a couple of things I had here for. I think I go to Shamar Stewart because he just moves like a guy at his size should move off the edge. He's not just a 3 tech that's been forced out there. I feel like he's a guy that really can actually. I agree with a little bit of what Dan said today. I think there's some ability out there to work off that edge and still make it work. I know as rare as that is to find. Gordon's, I think, a little bit 10, 15 pounds less. He's got a little bit more, I think, maybe ready to go. Stewart's going to take you a little more time to get there. I got 2nd round grades on either guy. Both of them fill the power edge role that we could want in setting those hard edges that we're looking for, Brian. But Shamar's just got a bit of the freakish component to him that stands out to me. I do think eventually he's going to be able to get some snaps inside at times too on pass rushing downs, and especially a defense like what McDonald runs. I think creatively that could work really well with him inside and his quickness. And so I think I'll lean to him. But in the 2nd round, if we ended up with either of those 2 guys, and I could easily see both of those 2 guys end up going in the 1st round too by someone else's evaluation of them. Very easy to get excited about both of these 2 players. They're both legit. They're part of that healthy stack to me, Brian, that's so deep there in that 2nd round, especially where I've got like 4 or 5 1st round edges, and I got 4 or 5, 6 2nd round edges in addition to it, and like another 5 3rd round edges. So they're just layered in this draft, layered. And a lot of my guys I have in the 3rd round, even many people have up in the 2nd round. So you'll see some draft boards, I think, Brian, they've got like damn near 12 guys in the 2nd round off the edge. It's a good question, man. I'm going Shamar. But I'm going to go with Dan. I know Dan's going next year. I'm going to do it again. I'll go with him next year for sure. I know Roundtable does some coverage down there. I could probably jump in on too, Brian. So there's a lot of reason to go do it on top of, try and make some connections down there and stuff on top of all that. Good content, connections, all that good stuff. Be calm. See clearly. Grubb better bob and weave when I still see him. It's on site. Be calm. We know it's basically on site if you see Grubb. That's why he had to run to Alabama, man. He thought he was going to be as far in the U.S. as he could be from a geographical spot from where you're at. So that there's like his his chances are almost insignificant as far as, you know, unless you're going down to watch a Bama game and running it to be calm. So he heard the message, man. He got out of town. It's like the Old West, you know. You let him know I'll be down in Main Street with my 6-shooter. You tell him it'll be high noon. And he's like, 8 o'clock in the morning, he's on that train to the south, you know. He's leaving on a midnight train to Georgia. I guess it's on a midnight train to Birmingham. Leaving. Randall McDaniel, thank you for another $5 donation, Randall. I appreciate you for that. As always, man, brother, very kind of you. And thank you so much. So something I just thought about. John made his bones in Green Bay, not active in free agency like Green Bay. But John Schneider isn't afraid to make big trades. Not a Green Bay thing. Very true. It's very, 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 very true. And that the Green Bay Packers have been very, 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 probably overly, quite frankly, Randall, in how safe they've played it as far as ever making any trades go. I think that there's a big argument to be made that there's more room for them to be much more active at times out there. And, you know, they'll just kind of hold on to guys and hold on to guys and hold on to guys and never get that any kind of value back in return, really, to the other side of it. But John's not been afraid to make a big swing and big move in trades. And he seems to have felt like in the past a better way to go versus, you know, trying to dive into free agency, and that's not you just really get the feeling from him like he just feels like that's fool's gold in free agency, that it's just a place that's just, there's not a lot to offer there unless you're being very precise with what you're looking for, and you can spend money, but you're not going to go overboard. And it's just been a lot of 1-year deals. I mean, he wants to get guys on prove it kind of deals too as well. And so maybe he'll go back that way again here, John, but Randall, but you're right. He has been hesitant to do free agency, but not that. I can't remember what was the last Green Bay major trade they made. Man, it's been a while, Randall. Long time. Probably too long, quite frankly, on this. You probably should have made something happen on this front up until this point. It's been, I'm talking decades since I can think of like a major trade they made for a pick. We're talking like a 2nd-round pick minimum. John ain't scared though, Randall. Can't be scared. Can't limit yourself by how you're gonna improve your roster, Randall. You just can't, and that's what Green Bay does. Is like, okay, you draft, great. You develop, great. You've got a pretty stable organization. That's gonna help. But boy, if you're gonna say, yeah, we ain't gonna spend money and we ain't gonna trade, hard to go that route. A little bit more into that, shoving that camel through the eye of the needle thing at that point a bit. Got to utilize everything in this day and age. Every other team is. Mark Sanchez, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, hey B, what'd you think of Tyler's show? I think Shock is how his Tyler Shock. I think Shock is how his last name is pronounced. Sometimes English sucks with enunciation. It's very confusing at times. I don't think I've looked at Tyler. So I haven't taken much of any kind of look at Tyler Slow, to be honest with you. I'll try to take a bit of a peek at him if I can. It sounds like that name's familiar for some reason. All right, yeah, Tyler Slow. Shug. Tyler Shug. Let me get him on my list, but I've got him on my list now. I will take a peek at him by the next show there, Mark. So just check in with me on the next show, and I'll have an update for you on that. We're hustling through on the old big boards, rolling along and singing a song here. So might as well show you guys a little bit of the. Oh, we can show you a little bit of the big board for a moment here and read some more donations. Boom. So, got the big board up here. We're up to about I don't know, I'm about to 150 or something, 150 names, something like that. There we go. So you can kind of see the updated board here from the first through the fifth round right now is, really one to pay attention to here with some of the first round names. Starting to fill it out. You can see I got the kind of the third rounds right now where most of my depth is for offense as far as my rankings. I'm not going to be as high as some of the running backs in this draft as far as their top end goes. I just think that they're all really solid. A lot of people I think are getting really hyped up on some of these backs just a little too much. And it's causing some to, I think, push them up a bit too high for my money. But I've got more of a selection of them into the third round here so far. Adam Baum, thank you for the $5 donation, Adam. What about Trey Hendrickson? Would he be a cheaper option than Myles Garrett? Kind of depends on Garrett on if you're going to have to sign him to a new deal on a contract extension immediately, or if he's going to play on the final. At least he's got like a couple of years left on his deal currently, Adam. So, technically Myles could be in line for an extension, but it's not as guaranteed as it is to a guy like Trey Hendrickson, who's going to be a free agent, who will not be franchised, and who is going to be able to make top end prices on the open market. Hendrickson to me is a guy that sometimes gets a little bit too locked and loaded in on pass rushing and not as much in on defending the run. When the Bengals have run issues, he can stand at the front and center of that at times when they has popped up. He rushed the passer probably as good as just about anybody other, just about as good as any edge in the sport, as far as productivity at least goes. I don't think he's more of a kind of a technician, I think, than more than he is the sort of the freak show that you get in Myles Garrett as far as just natural gifts go. But Hendricks is right around the same age, Adam. I do think, though, that you probably get Garrett on the final year of his deal at $19 million, whereas with Hendrickson, that might be the first year cost of a new extension, but you're then signing him to a 4-year extension at $120 million, something like that. I think I'd rather have Garrett. I don't think Hendrick's far away from him. I think I'd rather, all things being equal, have Garrett. I get where you're coming from, though, because you just have to sign Hendricks and then you don't have to actually trade for him like you would with Garrett, which makes a lot of sense. It does. He's a good player. I just watching his tape sometimes with Cincy, I just feel like there's times where he's selling out to rush the passer, and he's like, yeah, somebody else to take care of the run. Yeah. It's like 65 run defense grade last year from Hendrickson. I mean, that's kind of matches what I see from him on the tape. It's a little bit like with Parsons. It's like you have two guys that are really good edge rushers as far as rushing the passer, but they get a little bit caught up in just rushing the passer, and that's kind of can be sometimes not the greatest of territory to be in as an edge guy. And I don't know if that's something that's also something Mike would actually like as much, where he's going to want his edges to be able to be that role of being good against the run. It starts with stopping the run. And with Hendrickson, that's not where it starts with in his game. It's kind of like, I'll do the bare minimum I have to do. Especially again, tough when you're paying the guy $30 million on a multi-year deal like that. Dogzilla, thank you for the $2 donation. And he asked, is there an interior offensive line prospect worth trading up for? Not currently, in my opinion. As you can see, I've got currently 4 first-round grades on offensive linemen in this draft. We'll see where Campbell goes to. He's probably more of a guard than anything else. But in all of these cases, guys, I wouldn't want to trade up for any of them. I'd want to have, there's nobody that sold me to the point where I would want to move up for them extra picks. I'd rather just sit where I'm sitting and kind of land one of them a little bit with that. So no, I think that there's not really a guy that I see worthwhile on that. I might end up putting Kevin Banks into the first round and maybe Zabel into the first round by the end when I'm going to move this horizontal board around right up until the final kind of day. That's the whole evaluation process, is kind of trying to get these guys fitted to the right spot. But I'm not blown away by the offensive lineman. There's no guy out there that's just like Quentin Nelson. We could just get Quentin Nelson. It's a little bit leaner than that right now. There's just Dogzilla. There's a lot of kind of, they're good options, but they're mid first to late first round guys. That's where they stand. Or they're really high second round guys. As you can see, I got a collection of left guard types in the second round that I like quite a bit. But yeah, no, I don't see anybody that stands out on that side. Here's to the defensive side for you guys as well. Bit of the defensive look. And if I got a guy in bold, you can see I've got 4 defenders as far as blue chip grades in this draft. Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson. I have moved Mike Green up into the first round. Not a lot of other changes made around that from what I've shown you guys before with it, though. King Zhao, I'd rather get Garrett than draft personally. Garrett still has that Khalil Mack game-changing disruption like he did with the Bears. Agreed. And agreed. I would be in the same place with it. I think that I like this edge group. You can see it on my board here where I've got a lot of guys I like in this draft, but nobody I think is at the talent of Myles Garrett and what they bring to the table. He says Myles Garrett to Seattle will be wild. Will be wild. Cameron says get rid of Howell and pick up Joe Milton. Well, Seahawks fans love Joe Milton, Cameron. But I don't know if New England's looking to really let him go either, outside of being swayed by some really nice offer. John Kamen says Garrett has a no-trade clause in his contract. I'm expecting there's a short list that Garrett will go to. I thought I had heard he had no trade. Let me double-check that then. Thank you for the update on that. I guess I should have probably looked it up when you, Randall, asked it. Yes, he does look like he's got no trade clause. So thank you for the update on that. So he's got to sign off on it. Space March is when free agency starts. Alan says, yeah, no way they wouldn't trade us Ernest Jones either. That's right. Seattle wanted Ernest Jones and the Rams in the preseason, but they're like, no, we're moving him to Tennessee for less than what you're willing to give us. It's like, really, guys? Really? Yeah. Yeah. Suck it, Seattle. Archie says, Myles Garrett and Big Cat would be insane. They would be insane. Insanely awesome. Thrill House. Ursay is had a good Senior Bowl. Guy's mammoth. He is a monster. Weighed in at 330 pounds. 39 pounds, I think, according to Dan. Today. Like 339 pounds. Goodness. Dabney Trot. Myles Garrett would significantly change our defense. He would. Glad you guys are with me on this one. Most are. I think there's some hesitancy, but I get that. That's right, Duran. Correlation does not equal causation. You got it right. I was dancing around it, Duran. Dogzilla says, why not trade up for a BPA? I would if there was a guy worth it, Dogzilla. If there was a Quentin Nelson up there that was that kind of guy, if there was a Steve Hutchinson up there in this draft, I'd jump all over those guys. But you could just let the value fall to you with these guys. They're good, but they're not great. They're not blue chips. Kid says, I'm fine, thanks. And what about getting new players like Parsons because they just want to play under Mike? Is that an advantage for us to have Mike, Hawks Nest? Yeah, I think especially defensive linemen would love playing in this defense because you're going to get your one-on-one opportunities. You're going to get the chances. It sucks as a defense when you know, like, well, we can't stop the run, so we're never going to get around to rushing the passer. Well, when we do rush the passer, like I said, talked a little bit earlier on this, if we're just a front four type team and we don't like to blitz, then I'm going to easily get double teamed and I got to fight through double teams most of my day. So when you got a defensive minded coach like McDonald that can give you those opportunities to have the singles and the one-on-ones, I think that's going to be an attractive destination for a guy like that. I don't think it's enough to, he wants to be paid. That's going to be the first thing with a guy like Parsons is, I want my $30 million. And that's what's really as much driving Parsons. I'm sure if he does get traded, why the Cowboys don't do it is they don't want to pay him. But I think he'd be happy with coming here. Sure. Duran says, I wonder if Tampa Bay would be willing to trade one of their interior linemen. Maybe, Duran. Maybe. I know the guys that we would most want from them, they're not letting go. Tristan Wirfs, Luke Godecki, and Graham Barton. They're not letting any of those three guys go. Duran says, however, I think if John Schneider is going to trade for an offensive lineman, it's going to happen in season. Good. Yeah, it's good. Possibly. You don't like trading for him. Wilbert says Aggie's got 2 studs coming out. They do. Those guys are good players. Nagasa, Jalen Walker with the first pick. I could totally see it, Nagasa. You can see on my board right here, I've been trying to present to the 12s a little bit too, that this is really the way that this could play out where, I think it's pretty consensus right now as far as draft boards go that there's not as many people sold on there being true blue first round talent, but there's a real good collection of the second, third round. And when I find where you could look at recent draft history has taught us like we saw last year, where there was a big collection of offensive talent that especially went in those first 12 to 13 picks. So now we know that if we're going to play where that's going to be typically true with history, especially the quarterbacks, will be taken up probably a little higher than they maybe should be. Then what you're going to have likely happen from that is defensive players being the value for you when you pick at 18, Nagasa. And then when we look at the potentiality of what is the value of those defensive players, what is the most well-stocked of those players that be sitting at a value spot, kind of do come back to edge or cornerback, and edge more specifically. And even though I have only 4 guys here in the edge rated in the first round, I could easily see John Schneider having a first round grade on Kellen Kennard or Jalen Walker or Nick Skirton or Shamar Stewart. I mean, any of those 4 guys, if John Schneider was to tell me, Nagasa, I got a first round grade on these guys, I get that. And Jalen Walker reminds me a lot of Bruce Irvin. And he's got a fit with McDonald in the scheme because he also did the off-ball linebacker stuff with Georgia. So first off, lack of maybe edge production that you'd get from him as an edge rusher with Georgia versus some other guys in this draft, like let's say a Mike Green, Nagasa. He's playing in the Georgia defense, which is highly contextualized to be all about the stack fronts, and we're going to run games up front. It's rarely about our guys up front just needing to whoop their guys' butt. So you always got to evaluate those edge and interior guys different. Jalen Carter had like 3 sacks coming out in his final year or something. And so this is the same way with him. He's got good production, but he looks a lot to me like Bruce Irvin in that way coming off the edge. And he gives you some off-ball linebacker stuff. He can give you some Micah Parsons-like play a little bit and what he brings in that ability to be an off-ball linebacker and comfortable in that role. Letting Mike McDonald run some games up there with Walker. So if he were to be elevated a little bit up more of the Hawks board versus mine then because of that, yeah, I could completely understand that. He's a hell of a player. He's pure explosion off the edge. He's got the traditional markers of dip and bend that you also look for in edge guys. I'd get it totally. Brian says, I'll be going to the combine next year. I'm going to try to get to both next year. It's my goal. I got to set it up in advance, though, far in advance, but definitely going to try. Dabney Trot says, trade Lockett to Denver. Since we have a trade history with Denver, they could use another wide receiver for Bo Nix. Tyler Lockett could also mentor the young wide receivers up and coming like Marvin Mims Jr., etc. I like it, man. And I like it as an inventive trade too, Dabney Trot, because you do have Tyler originally from Kansas. I think he is, well instituted here in Seattle. I think he's going to be probably a lifer in Seattle when it's all said and done, but go play for a year back in your kind of home, around your hometown area, so to speak. And could make some sense out there. I know Kansas is a little bit further away from Colorado, but it's in the neighborhood, right? It's just next door. But that's a possibility. I can see that Dabney Trot. If you go to the combine, we'll definitely have to hit me up there, Brian, if I end up getting out there next year. Brett Favre to the Jets was the last big trade they made. That's right. It's a ways back, huh, Mark? Man, that one's far back. Back in 90. Back in 06. Yeah, I think that's the last one. AZ Hawker, Brandon's definition of a short podcast is quite different than most podcasters, like 30 minutes, first 2 hours. I know, I can't do a short show. I try every time and I just can't do it. I'm physically incapable. Physically incapable. Yeah, Duran, I could see Lockett fit in there in Denver's receiving core. They definitely have a need for that kind of guy out there, you know. Retirement's also possible with them. Arjun, have you all seen Kyle Williams at Washington State? I haven't seen him yet. Get around checking him out though for sure. Duran Hawksnest, are we still paying Jamal Adams dead cap this year? No. We did we ate all this last year, Duran. So rather than post June 1st him and separate the money, you ate all of the dead money on last year's cap. We're cleared off the books. No more Jamal. No more Quandre Diggs. We're free and clear, baby. We're free. Kick up. Do you agree with the picks that the Seahawks were making while building the Legion of Boom? Like, were you a fan of Sherman or Earl Thomas out of the draft? Oh, yeah. I love that draft. I'm just unpacking my thoughts. Kick up a little bit. I'm trying to go back to, back to some of those drafts, that territory. Let's go back to the Earl draft. Number one, I loved obviously Trent Williams coming out. He was a manimal and very easy to see he was going to be good. But I thought Russell Okung was very close to where he was at and what you were going to get from him. And maybe he didn't have that sort of, Walter Jones upside, but he had a really good upside that he was already at walking in the door. Earl Thomas took away the ball at the college level in a special way that safeties just don't do at the college level. You guess you might get a couple picks a year. I think he had like 7 in his final year. And when you went and watched how he got those picks and the speed by which he played at on tape, this guy just had a different gear. Just a different, it was, and we're not talking 40 here. It's just pure football speed. Put the pads on him and how fast he goes. And so Earl with the playmaking and the picks out there at Texas, yeah. And then Golden Tate in the second round, who the college tape is ridiculous with him. I mean, just so much. He had so many fun catches out there in college and some fun plays. And those 3 picks in particular in that draft were just awesome. Now, Richard, it was a little harder in the later rounds. I wasn't as well accustomed to a guy like Richard at that time, who had just barely gotten to the cornerback position, who had been a late convert there. You liked him from a physical side, going to Carroll's defense because Carroll looked for these bigger corners and you knew that this is a guy that fits in. He's got ball skills, but definitely did not know that Richard was going to become what Richard became. Larson says, if this is 2012, we're going to get Dylan Gabriel. Maybe, man. Maybe. Duran says, wasn't super impressed by Bijan Robinson a couple years ago, but watching him last year, I think he's become a top 10. I do too as well. They've kind of, I think, tried to have to figure out a little bit the best way to use him there, Duran. It's been kind of a process, I think, getting him where they want to try to get him. And it seems like they're starting to find that money spot there. Captain CT, thank you for reminding me. Please do, folks, hit that like button if you could for me. It's a little thing, but it's a big thing that helps me along in a major way on this channel. I really do appreciate it. King says, Garrett plus McDonald equals dominance. That's right. Thrill House, Hawksnest, if you were a GM, what would you do to address our secondary? If we draft Wooler, does he take Bryant's spot? We get a couple backs in the draft and could get a whole new secondary. A little bit of it depends on what I would be doing with Woolen. I'm not so sure Woolen's the long-term option. I don't know what you could get with Woolen via a trade. If I can't get a lot for Woolen via a trade, I'd probably just hold on to him another year and let him play out his rookie contract and then let him roll. I think I'd probably walk away this draft with 2 cornerbacks and a safety, Thrill House. Wooler would be a guy that would be more of a safety of the future. I don't think that you have him coming in to take Brian's spot. You'd have him duke it out and there'd be a competition. But, it would be Bryant's kind of spot by de facto. But you'd be more getting ahead of the potential of Bryant walking in for agency so that Bryant couldn't then hold you to where you have no other safety options and you feel like you have to pay him because it's going to be an empty position otherwise. So you're just getting a little bit of insurance for next year. I would look at corners because I think corner value is going to be good in this draft, Thrill House. So many teams are going to be drawn, I think, to offensive line and edge and wide receiver and defensive tackle. And I think that corner is going to get a little bit forgotten about while it has still a lot of legitimately pretty good talent within it to pick from. And so a little bit like last year, you take a guy 4th round, take a guy the 5th round, maybe, double dip it. But I think you can find some good value out there in the cornerback class in that area of things, Thrill House. So probably 2-1, 2 corners, 1 safety. You come out of the draft. Where you pick them at, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, you could go Nick Emawari in the 2nd round or Xavier Watts or, you could Malachi Starks even in the 1st round if they want to go shocker. So it's kind of a variety of areas from where you can pick these parts at. But I think you just end up somehow or another in how the draft ends up shaking out, coming out with that 2 corners and a safety. Kings out, I'm not a fan of Gabriel's personality. Sorry, I'm not a fan of Gabriel personally. He's he's not for everybody. To your point, right? He's not gonna meet everybody. Kick up. Do you know who Carcino is? Another sports YouTuber, Brando? I don't know that name. Sound maybe familiar a little bit? Too sure though. Duran, hey Brando, do you see us taking a tight end early in the draft? Did they decide to move off of Noah Fant? Yeah, I think it's a real possibility, Duran. There's a couple of things for this too. You do have Fant. Farrell Brown's a free agent, so you do have a need for another 2 tight ends, really. I mean, there's another position that you very well might double dip. And let's remember with this, that John does have a recent history of double dipping in the draft, where I take 1 tackle, I'll take 2. I'll take 1 corner, I'm going to take 2. I take 1 receiver, I'll come back the next round, take another wide receiver. He's done this a lot in recent drafts. And so when it comes to tight end, I've got a lot of guys in this draft. I was just on the look at the big board here, Duran, and I haven't even really, what's crazy about this is that I have not even begun to really look at all of the tight ends in this draft fully. I have a lot of guys still left to still scout in this thing. Lachey from Iowa, for instance. There's a couple of guys still tight end wise that I got to look at, but this is the best class in 10 years for tight ends. It's a great year, Duran, to be picking 2 tight ends and pick early, late, however you want to do it. But if they were to have a guy like Warren, Colston Loveland, with some of the connections Mike McDonald has to the Michigan program, either of those 2 guys in the 1st round could be definitely targets the Seahawks look at. I know I have a 2nd round grade on them, but I'm not going to be crying. Those are high 2nd round grades I have on both those guys, so I'm not crying tears if we're taking them in the middle 1st. I think the rankings are all kind of about the same place. Because look, when it's all said and done on this, the brass tacks of this, as you can see, when you look at my 1st round grades, I have a total of 1, 2, 3, what we got? 5, 6, 10, 12, 15. I got 16 1st round grades in this draft. So end up just by my numbers game alone, it's very much a potentiality likelihood by the way I've run this that we're running with a 2nd round guy when we pick at 18 anyway. That's not no big deal to me. That's just the nature of the beast this year in this draft. But the other part of this that's nice with this, Duran, is that not only do you need a replacement for Noah, you need the specific replacement of an H-back tight end. Not necessarily the inline guy, but Tyler Warren, H-back. Colston Loveland, H-back. Harold Fananen, H-back. Mason Taylor can do both inline and H-back stuff. Gunnar Helm, more of an H-back. Jackson Haas, inline. Benjamin Uzirik as inline. Elijah Rojo is an H-back. Aronde Gadsden is an H-back. Bryson Nesbitt H-back. So there's a lot of H-back guys in this draft, is my point, Duran. There's a lot of those kind of guys you can pick from. JSD, will you be streaming on Twitch later this week? I will. I might be streaming tonight on Twitch, JSD. So we'll see. But I'll definitely be on Friday and probably Thursday for sure. And then I've got so we're going to be having a game coming out here in about another week or so. I think it's like next Monday, I want to say. Next Monday night, we've got a game coming out. So I'll be streaming like long stream on next Monday night too. So if you're not, please do get subscribed over to my Twitch channel. I'm over there, the Seahawks Nest. I'm often going to be streaming live over there in the off season on that side of things. And I would expect that I will be over there a lot here this off season. So you want to get subbed up over there, as we'll be talking a lot of Hawk Shop over there, kind of just rolling through, doing a little bit of gaming. I'm glad you're with it, King Zhao. You're on board with me on this. Herbicide's going to shoot a hole in all this. Is Garrett's going to the Chiefs? They did make the move for Frank Clark. You know, they were one of those teams that's made kind of these moves in the past. And look, the Frank Clark move, even though he didn't play great, playoff Frank was awesome. Got a Super Bowl with him, right? Or two. Racist Pumpkin says 339 pounds is a lot of spaghetti. That is a lot of spaghetti. He's a big boy. Hand grenade B, is it possible to go after TJ Watt? I don't think so. I think they just signed him to a new contract out there. And so I think that they're kind of stuck. Let me take a look here where they're at. I think the Steelers are also still trying to go for it. So I don't think they're in offload mode. No, he's got one more year of his deal there. So he could. I think there is some injury concerns there with TJ. Seems like he's kind of starting to break down a little, even though he's not super old. But 30 years old at this point. His body's not seemingly, it seems like he's just always banged up. Every time I turn on a Steelers game, he's walking to the sideline, clutching at something. But he has only got the 2025 year deal left on his deal, where he's making a base salary of $21 million. And you would trade for him, you would only be on the hook. Yeah, you'd be on the hook for the $21 million. So you'd be at the same cost as Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett on the final year of his deal, though. You probably signed him to an extension. Kick up. Would you ever stream with Norb Cam or Hawk Blogger? I sure would. Kick up. Trying to get better a little bit this year with reaching out a little bit more and trying to expand the horizon a bit on that. So I'll try to be good about that in the background on my side and do a little bit more reaching out. So I'd like to have some more different folks on if we can, just expand out a little bit. Lucky LaRue, Jack Sawyer is better than you have him rated. I will admit it 100% on this, Lucky LaRue, that there's always going to be a collection of guys for me in every given draft where I don't quite just get it as far as where the majority are, Lucky LaRue. Like, I want to try to paint this in the right way, where it's a place where I don't just quite, I watch the tape, and I just go, I like him, but I don't love him. And with Jack Sawyer, I like him, but I don't love him. And with so many good edges in this draft, especially those that bring the traditional things I want to look for from the position that I know work really well at the NFL level, guys that work off of power by and large in college, Lucky LaRue. By my history of scouting guys, you got to be next level powerful to have that translate to the NFL level. And I don't know that I see next level power with Jack Sawyer. I think he'll be a very capable player. I even have kind of like a Ryan Kerrigan kind of projection for him. For me, that's worthwhile in the third round. I think that it's going to be more of like second effort, high motor kind of plays that get him there to the quarterback. And I don't want to pay a first or second round pick for that. But I will admit it completely on this, Lucky LaRue. There is always these guys in every draft for me that I'll just kind of walk in and go like, look, I very well likely could be just missing it on this one. and just it's just not clicking in. And there's certain guys that's that way. Walter Nolan, Lucky LaRue is another guy like that for me, where a lot of people like Nolan and see almost like Jalen Carter kind of traits with him on that. I don't with him on that. I'm not quite there with him on that, but it's usually there's a couple of those guys every draft for me that are in that place. And Sawyer's just in that spot. The quickness isn't there. The bend isn't there. The dip isn't there. Can he use his hands really well? Does he have a good feel? Yeah. Does he have the power like we spoke about there? Yeah, definitely does there. But he is missing the traditional three-step skill set that I want to see from the position and kind of in full. That power can work in college, but it can get taken away real quick at the pro level. And if all you got is back to lean on is power and technique, I don't know. I'm reticent on that one a little bit. But again, I still got him in third round, so I'm not down. I'm still a day 2 guy. Solomon, what do you think about packaging one of our edges, Hall or Nwosu, or Mafer Woolen with our first and a third for Garrett? You're in the same place I'm at with this, Solomon. That's what I think would be a line to do this. So let's walk through this as a exercise where it's us and duking it out with these other teams. These other teams are more about the draft capital and what they're trying to offer Cleveland. We come back to Cleveland and we go, hey, we can almost offer the exact same draft capital to the point that these other teams are offering, to your point, i.e. a first and a third round. But now here, what we'll do is we'll give you a Hall, we'll give you a Reek, or we'll give you a Hall, and we'll give you a Walker. So now that you're getting the draft capital and you're getting some young players that you have club control over as we move into the future. How about that? And I think that's a way to creatively get this done to where you can supersede the deals being offered in competition. And you can do so with players that aren't necessarily Solomon cornerstone players to your program, where you can take the hit of losing those guys and understand it. And if you're going to bring in Garrett, there's much more less of a need to have a guy like Hall here into the future, especially considering, you're not going to pay Hall probably into the future if you have Garrett on your roster. Thrill House says, so if we traded DK and got, say, 3 picks, we'd have 14 picks this draft. That's 2 picks every round. Yeah, you're not getting 3 picks for DK. You'll get 2 picks back for DK at the most. Probably like a first and a third, unless you're just going like a second, third, and a fourth or something like that. But yes, in general, you've got 9 picks right now by my calibration. You could get up to 10 picks with if the compensatory system gives you 3 instead of 2. But you would essentially be by the eyeballing it before we get to compensatory picture at 9 right now. And if you were at, to say, 12 or 13 Thrill House, you would be packaging picks together to move up in the draft rather than just picking all of those picks natively. JSD, if the Seahawks trade Derek Hall and picks for Myles Garrett, would that be better than Legion of Boom? McDonald is IMO better than Dan Quinn, so why not? Well, I think that the Legion of Boom was one of the all-time special defenses in the NFL. And there's only been about 4 of those, in my opinion, JSD. The late Steelers teams take one of those at like 78 or whatever. But, the Baltimore Ravens unit that won it, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, the 85 Bears, and your Seattle Seahawks, those are your all-time greatest defenses. So I don't think that I think we're lucky enough to have just one of those select 4 or 5 run through our city one time. You're not going to see that same lightning strike in that way ever again in the same place. But can you build one of the best defenses in the NFL with a guy like Garrett as your centerpiece and McDonald with the mind that he brings and the foundation you have already laid? Yeah, you absolutely can. And yeah, I think it's something like that to me. It's you kick in a Derek Hall, you throw in a Reek or a Walker, you put in a first, you put in a second, or you put in a first and a third. You kind of package all that together. I think you can find a way to get this deal done. If you can get Cleveland to the spot of being willing, of course, to fully move him. Hoop Craze says, what school is WRU, LSU or OSU, Brando? I would give the nod to OSU. There's just a little bit of a longer track record of them producing the wide receivers. And it just seems like every other year you've got a first or second rounder, or you have a first and a second rounder. And I don't think that that's the same way with LSU, where they'll have their dead spots. The LSU guys, when they're good, they're great. Odell Beckham and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, but OSU's just more consistent about pumping them out. King Bomber says, was just listening to your pod earlier with Dan. Just saw you were live. What's up, King? You got imagine Luka trade happened to the Seahawks. It's like trading JSN and Spoon for Dak or something. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we were asked earlier on that kick up on the stream of what would be an equivalency that we could think of. I couldn't think of any NFL trade that really was that same kind of equivalency where you're looking at it and you're going, what? Huh? Kings, ideally, if we got Dart, Howard, McCord, Ewers, Leonard, any of those, I'd be pretty happy and excited. Yeah. Those guys will drive a lot more excitement for me than any recent guys that we've taken, King, in that back end, undrafted. Those guys got a lot more juice to them. Gilbert says, I'm definitely not a pick hugger. Like a tree hugger, but a pick hugger. I'm definitely not a pick hugger, which is why the constant trade down in the draft irks me sometimes. I can understand that. No, pick hugger. Those dirty hippie pick huggers. T-Lock retires as a Hawk. He will, Cameron, for sure. Even if he goes away for a year, he'll come back and sign a day contract. The real loss I miss having a quarterback who can run for a first down when nobody else is open. I do too, man. I think that's a necessary component in this modern era. King Bomber Brandon's the type of guy to go all in every poker game. Hey, I'll tilt that board fast, though. We're gonna learn really quickly where everyone stands. We don't have to wait till the end of the night on this one. We can skip to the end real quick on this. Who needs the show? They got my 2 draft crushes this year: Jalen Walker and Jaden Higgins. Good players, man. Good players, Nagasa, and I think both of those guys, no matter whether or not they're going to come in and give you star power potential or something like that, I think that they do give you really good floors and real certainty as far as you're going to get a contributor coming in and a guy that should be able to contribute right from the jump. I make that relation to Jalen Walker as being like a Bruce Irvin kind of player, much younger than Bruce was coming out. But in Bruce's first year, of course, Nagasa, you got 8 sacks from him. He was instantaneously productive for you. And I think the same is going to be true with Jalen Walker because he has those same things I was talking about that Jack Sawyer's missing. Jalen Walker's got first step quickness, dip, and bend. 3 attributes that you have them in cumulative, all 3 of those things. Yeah, you need to get your hands worked. Yeah, you need to understand leverage. Now there's a lot of parts extra that you need to understand footwork and all that, counters. But it's going to get you a long way just being able to do those 3 things initially out the gate. It's a pretty certainty of production out the gate with that. And then you build up from there. We do need a nose tackle. Cool. Big King Bomber. Yeah, we do need more inside linebackers, even if you sign EJ Bryan. I mean, you need some depth. We got away with being really lean there once we let those other 2 guys go, but I would expect them to you're probably going to draft at least one guy in this draft somewhere in the inside linebacker position. They'll make probably a signing out there too for a vet. Wouldn't surprise me if they bring back that guy, Josh Ross, that they signed from Baltimore. I think he's a former Michigan guy. Even I think there's a lot of familiarity there with him and McDonald. Can't remember when he was in Michigan. I might have that wrong. BP says TJ Watt is not someone that you can depend on to stop the run. Yep. A little bit in that. He's like that Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons role on things a little bit. As you can't question what they are as a pass rusher, but do say sometimes just put the pedal to the floor as a pass rusher in lieu of making sure they're taking care of the run defending duties. Maybe not as much on that side of things. GSD says Seattle had 19 first-round picks last year. Wonder if it is more or less this year. How much did you have last year? Great question. Let me go look it up. Very good question. Where did I put that stuff at? Oh, there we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Wow. I had GSD. I'm just counting right now, and I had 19 as well last year. So John, me and the Seahawks got to the same number of first round picks last year. I think we had different guys in the first round. But I'll show you guys what it looks like here. So this is this year's horizontal board, and this one is last year's. So I had my blue chip guys last year: Harrison Neighbors, Odunzie, Brian Thomas, first round grade, Brock Bowers, blue chip, Joe Thomas, blue chip, Huanga, Mims, blue chip. And then you can see I had these other guys, Fashanu, Futanu, and Latham, first round grades. No surprises there. Defensively, Dallas Turner versus Latu Chop Robinson were my 4 edge first rounders. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Terrion Arnold were my other first rounders on that side. But that's 19 in total at that point. So same numbers, JSD, but obviously they had Murphy up in the first. What's up, Monsoon? Duran says Saquon's going to be wearing a golden jacket in 10 to 12 years. Probably. Just saying something, because it's going to be hard for these running backs to get up and get that gold jacket anymore. Evan says, what's your reaction if you hear with the 18th pick of the 2025 NFL Draft, the Seahawks select Jackson Dart, quarterback, Ole Miss? Yeah. Reaching for need. Like John just is so oversold and needing to go get a quarterback. He's kind of reaching up to grab one. I definitely think, look, Jackson to me has got a 3rd round grade. If you grab him in the 2nd round, I get it. You go up in the 1st round, I'm like, okay, hold on. Now are we really sure about evaluation of the player, or are we just reaching because there isn't any QBs in this draft? And I think that would be, Evan, it'd be very hard for me not to think that more of the pull from that situation was less about the conviction in Dart and more about the, man, we're just really driven to go find a quarterback, especially if they don't pay Geno Smith. So I would be more in that lane, and I don't think that that's the pathway to success when it comes to a draft. Yeah, unless you're sure. I mean, if John's just blown over and sure, there's to a degree of it, Evan, I'll say, when it comes to John picking one position, that I might give him a little bit more rope than any other to say, okay, look, I don't know about what you're doing here, but you've been pretty good on this in the past, so I'm gonna lay low here in the cut and let you just run what you're doing and just go, okay. This would be maybe one of those positions being quarterback. But this is really a spot with Jackson where, 6'1.5", arm is above average, but it's not phenomenal. It's not great. Good mobility, not great mobility. What is the defining trait we're looking for to this kid to be taken in the 1st round? Toughness? I don't know if that's enough. Our O-line and run game are our biggest problems. O-line's definitely at the top of the stack, Space. That's for sure. Yeah, King's with me. So there's one thing I trust John Snyder on, it's his quarterback evaluation. So I'd be pulled a little bit on that one. I'm with King on this one a little bit in the same way where it's, look, I don't think Jackson should go that high, but then there also some trust built in here from John in how he's approached the quarterback position in the past and usually gets these decisions right. Usually if he's going to make some swing like this, it's not to mess it up. I could maybe, you can make an argument that might be one of the better positions he has at evaluating. Brian says Evan, I'll need a new TV if we drafted Dart. I get that. I understand. It wouldn't drive a lot of excitement. I'd have a hard time with that too. And Largen's season 08, yeah, there's just not a lot of great quarterbacks this draft. It's just lean. It's not the best. It's a little bit just like, TheSeahawksNest, can you do a quick 5-minute mock draft? So this thing is a 5-minute mock. We're gonna probably wrap it up here pretty soon. Actually, I wanted to kind of try to keep this within a couple hours because I got some more shows lined up this week for you guys, and if I can do these quick and fast, I can do more of them. It's kind of the thinking with it. But we'll get another mock up. We just ran our mock 1.0, so we got to give that one a little time to breathe, and then we'll get the mock 2.0 going here soon enough with our next scenario. Bomber Dart at 18 and Dart past 100 are two different types of excitement for me. Ross, we should sign Matt Flynn for $15 million as a backup and then draft a quarterback in the 3rd round from Wisconsin. Hey, you're trying to replicate, man. We're trying to replicate here. You got to do it down the line. It's like a magical spell. You have to do every point of the ritual, every spot. I do think Brian is. I know you're reticent on the Dart in the 1st round, and I'm with you on that. And that I don't think that's where he should go. I do think the buzz we are hearing here is that he might be doing that elevating thing where he's like, they thought maybe going the Senior Bowl did some of these teams it was going to be Milrow, but instead it's become Dart is the riser, and he's a rising. Adam Baum, we need another middle linebacker. We do. Po' boy. Hawksnest, your thoughts on Jihad Campbell? He's my current draft crush. Well, it was just asked a second ago if I could do a mock, and we did just do a mock draft. So my official mock draft, and you're going to like to see this, is this one right here. Wait a second. Don't look at that. No, not that one. That's for Wednesday's show. Hold on. Let me find this damn thing. Boom. There we go. So this was my mock that we ran. I think it was last week we ran, but this is the first mock I ran. And this was a mock that I ran, po' boy, if we did not sign Ernest Jones. If you're re-signing Ernest Jones, I don't think it makes any sense to be taking an inside linebacker in the 1st or the 2nd round. But if we didn't re-sign Ernest Jones and we traded back, as I did my situation here, where I traded 25 and 2nd round, let me say that right here. I get back their 1st round at 25. I get a 2nd round back at 57. The Texans get back a 1st round pick and a 4th round pick. So I took Jihad Campbell as the first guy that I selected then. Now, again, in the situation that we then didn't re-sign Ernest Jones. But to me, he's a lot like the kid the Packers took who was the first inside linebacker off the board last year. He's got checks off the boxes size-wise, great movement, great stop and start. He's got some length, kind of can do it all in the context of his game, from rush the passer and blitz to play the run and tackle well to cover really well. He's got that upside to him as well. And you know that Packers inside linebacker they took, whose name I never freaking can. I got to get this guy's name here. I always forget this damn guy's name for whatever reason here. Edgerrin Cooper. Edgerrin Cooper went out and he was like the 3rd highest graded inside linebacker this year, po' boy, in football as a rookie. So that tape you saw with those freakish attributes that he brought, and if that could translate, and that was a guy a little bit like Jihad, where it wasn't that every part of his game was rounded and refined. There was some rough spots, but the highs were there. And if you can tap into those highs consistently, the type of player that he could become, and you give, to me, that kind of raw lump of clay to McDonald like this in Jihad. He's not even raw. It's just a bit of a lump of clay in certain ways. I think that he's going to get the most out of him. So Campbell, to me, second round grade, but if you took him at the end of the first round, especially trading back and picking up an extra second or third round pick, makes a lot of sense. Adam says, bro, I'd burn my Seahawks flag if we take Dart with our first pick. I get it. I get it. Solomon says, on a side note, do you think Bowers might be saved with the Chip Kelly hire? You mean Black Bowers? Yeah, not really. How many great tight ends did the Oregon offense produce, Solomon? You know? I mean, ask G. Scott's kid what he thinks about being featured as a tight end in Chip Kelly's offense. I guess he did a little bit of something last year, but it's not prolific for tight ends, man. So I don't know. I think he's still facing an uphill battle there. It helps. It's better than it would have been for Bevel. I'll say that. Brian says Mount Miller has ESPN has the Hawks going D with the first two rounds. It's possible. They go off value board, Brian, and that is a way that this could draw you in that direction. Value is value. And who is the top guy on your board? And just because you took a defensive player in the first, and just because you have some needs on offense, doesn't mean that you allow that to sway you from the value of the board. The value is that. Need allows you to sway that, and you don't want to be driven by need. Adam says, do you think we can keep K9 or trade him this offseason? I think he's most likely to be kept, Adam. I don't think he has a lot of trade value unless you're putting together as far as a kind of a cumulative package deal, like putting something together for a Garrett. I think he's likely to be here through another season. I don't think he gets an extension, just plays out the final year of his rookie contract. Alpha's bad as blooms. I may be the biggest Donovan Jackson enthusiast on the planet. I truly believe that if he tests well, which he will, he's a first-round pick. If we move back with the Commanders-Texans, I'm happy with him. I'm perfectly happy with Donovan Jackson too, Alpha. He gives you some nice ability to be able to play both tackle and guard. He showed that. So, if they want to go up and get him at the end of the first round, trading back and grab him there. / even if he just goes in the first round, to your point, him playing at left tackle through the playoffs against those really good teams and doing as well as he did out there is going to make people feel very warm and fuzzy about picking him, where they go, not only do we know he can play guard, but we can kick him out in a tackle and a pinch and not feel the least bit bad about it. That's going to only increase his value. Alan says, Dart reminds me a bit of Purdy when he was in college, and nobody wanted Purdy. Yeah, I do think he's got a little bit of a stronger arm than Purdy does, where you really could feel Purdy's limitations as far as just the velocity. You weren't going to be able to see him crank it up on the RPMs, and Dart's got a little bit of that, but they're pretty close, I think, in build. Overall, probably fairly close delivery-wise. Mobility's somewhat similar. I think Purdy's a little bit quicker burst-wise, and Dart's probably maybe a little bit faster, I don't know, or as fast. JSD says, McDonald wrote a personal letter to season ticket holders and how he let them down at home this year. He says to bring the noise back next year. Well, he certainly had a good year, I think, and we feel good about what we got. He's got work to do. But we as fans also have some work to do in getting back in that stadium and not letting the opposition take it over like we did this year. Hopefully that can be fixed. Pedro, I like the Stanford wide receiver as well. Got myself a second round grade on him. Very good, very competent. Definitely a guy that the Seahawks could potentially look to target. Hawks fan, I'd sign Jody Bosa if he was a free agent. Very well might be. I think he's still under contract technically with the Chargers. I'd be a little worried with him just because of the injury thing. He's always seemingly another one of those guys, just always like TJ Watt, always beat up, always fighting through some injury. Herbicide said, would you rather trade for a 27th and a 59th pick or a 30th and a 56 for our 18th pick? Probably 30 and 56. Herbicide. It's pretty close though. It's like it's a half a dozen, 1, 6 another. Matt Miller says Campbell in round 1 as well. Ooh. Jeez Louise, really? Huh. TheSeahawksNest. So if we don't get Jihad Campbell, shouldn't we just bring Bobby back on a 1-year contract again? I just don't think they quite like the fit on the defense, or they would have just brought him back in. I think they just came to a quick decision last year of, and I mean, Bobby had a good year, so it's nothing against Bobby. It just doesn't seem a fit for what McDonald wants to get from the position. I mean, it's not like Ernest Jones is the fastest guy in either anymore, but I think that there's definitely some coverage limitations that McDonald doesn't want to potentially get exposed in his defense there with Wagner, if I had to guess. Ham says, dude, got to admit, Rams got to steal with their Jared Verse. They did. Hell of a pick for them. Oh, Campbell being that, I was spacing on the Campbell. I was thinking of the other Campbell. There's too many Campbells in this draft. So he's got him in the first round as well. That's interesting, Brian. Okay. I thought I was going too high on that pick at 25, but maybe that's where he's trending to. I think it's going to help with the kid coming out of, with Edgerrin Cooper in Texas A&M last year. I think that's really going to help elevate Jihad's value, because I just think teams are going to look at him and they're going to see very much a similar player. Jordan says, oh man, today may have pretty much killed me wanting to keep working for my company. Management can really ruin work in the dumbest ways possible. Yes, they can. Hang in there, man. I've been there. It's tough when you're dealing with dumb management. It really is. Brian Kennicott, how you doing, man? What's up, what's up? Hand grenade. I want John to prioritize the O-line so much this offseason that we ask ourselves, did we really go that far? I as well, man. I've harped on it for years. Make it a centerpiece point. Make it priority number 1. Get this thing knocked out and figured out, and let's go. You know what I mean? Let's go. So hopefully this is the offseason they finally do it. I'd like to see it. They've been hesitant in the past, but I think if they do it too, on top of all these points, that it's gonna pay off if you do it. You're going to walk away going, boy, I'm very happy that we went out there and made these moves. So, all right, we're going to go and wrap this thing on up here now and kind of put a button on this one. I want to thank, if I can here, the sponsor of this show. That's going to be Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy sponsoring us throughout this year. You want to get on the action of the Super Bowl, the over, the unders, take advantage of the fixins. Well, you can do so right now using my code NEST. Click the link in the description section below to Underdog Fantasy, and they will match you 2 for 1. So $100, $50 back in your pocket, $200 deposited, $100 back in your pocket, all the way up to $2,000 deposit, $1,000 back in your pocket. Put your parlays together, get in on the basketball action, take advantage of once Luka gets back in action over there, or Anthony Davis down with Dallas. They get the freebie picks kind of put in there to help you build up a little bit of a parlay. But thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the show. Note as well on a couple of programming notes. We do have a few different points going actively right now that are off of this main channel that I just want to make you guys aware of. The Hawks Nest Clips channel is rolling strong. We got about 500 clips. Mainly they're coming off the back of these live stream shows. Some of it though is me just uploading some clips and just generalized thoughts on just kind of quick matters at times that I just want to just pump out there and not put a lot into, just kind of get it out. So we're doing that. I'm also going to be very, very active this offseason when it comes to the Seahawks Nest on Twitch. I might be streaming over there tonight, so if you want to check that out, you can, but do get subbed up to me over on the Seahawks Nest on Twitch. If you got the Amazon Prime account, all that other stuff, you can just sub up to me over there, and you find me over there as I will be getting some new games coming out, kind of chopping it up there, a little more low-key on that side of it. A couple programming notes. We're going to come back on Wednesday with your top 20 free agents here, coming up here into March. So I've identified what I do believe the top 20 free agents targets are for your Seattle Seahawks as far as potentials coming in here. We'll be doing that show on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. I've got the roundtable show. We'll be back out this week tomorrow at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. Got another special show for you guys this week, maybe Thursday, Friday as well, in addition to this. So we're going to keep this coming out all the way through the week. Want to really kind of pump out some of these shows quickly to you guys as I get the thought to do so when an idea strikes me, like today with this Garrett situation that I really did want to talk about. But we've got a lot on deck. So stay abreast with here at the Hawks Nest. I appreciate you guys for some great discussion and great talk. If you're out there dealing with some of the snow in the Pacific Northwest today out there, be safe. They don't know how to drive out in the snow. If you're coming from the Midwest out of Seattle, they're like, oh, why do they know how to drive in the snow? No, they don't. Be careful. Take it easy out there. Gets a little bit buck wild. People just get out of their cars and start walking home. Like even on the middle of the highway, I'm just get out here and walk. So just prepare for it to get weird. You can count on that when the snow starts to fall out there in Seattle. It's going to get weird. Thank you guys again today for watching and checking out both the channel here today on the earlier show with Dan Viennes as we talked about the Senior Bowl and all the breakdowns as he was in person. So if you get a chance, go check out that as well. As I had a lot of fun chopping it up with him. We almost talked like 3 hours today on the Senior Bowl and the players in the Senior Bowl. Just did that earlier today. So really, again, do shout out to Dan Viennes for hanging in with me for 3 hours on that, as I know he's really tired just getting back into town after a long week out there at the Senior Bowl tracking these players. So appreciate you guys watching. Much love out to all of you guys with all of the donations being so kind with the drop of the $100 drops and 50 drops and $200 drops today and all that in between, all of the rest of you in between on that. Really, really thank you guys for all that support here to the channel. We're going to keep coming at you throughout this offseason. It don't stop. We're going to keep ramping this up and keeping it going. I'm not saying the Hawks have to go hard at Myles Garrett. I'm not saying it's all in time. I'm just saying let's consider it. Just tell me what the cost is. I'm just picking up the phone. Just tell me the area of the cost. What's the price going to be around? Maybe we probably won't do it, but just kind of just tell me where we are in the area of it. Just ballpark this one for me, Cleveland. And then let's see if maybe we're willing to do it. You never know. You never know. Thanks for watching, guys. Back soon, but until that time, don't you ever forget. Don't you do it. Don't you dare. I see you. Don't you forget. Never forget. Go Hawks.